penalty for being average has never been so severe, but the payoff for being great has never been so high. What you need to do is find a way. When I first arrived in London, I don't know anyone, I've never been above the equator in my life, and I thought, okay, I want to accelerate the time that it takes to be successful in this city. I did £4 million worth of sales in our first 6 months. Spend time developing your own strategy, because in any economy there are successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses.
What would you say right now are the main opportunities available?
Technology is the advantage. If you're using AI to create stuff, now you can do superhuman work. I believe entrepreneurship is the journey of 1,000 pitches. 1,000 average pitches gets you nothing, and 1,000 great pitches gets you $10 to $100 million.
If you were starting over today and you want to make $1 million, how would you do it?
The two things that I would do.
Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the Iced Coffee Hour.
It's a pleasure. It's really good.
Would you say making money is easier today than it's ever been before?
Depends how you're making money, but certainly if you are an entrepreneur or you're entrepreneurial, it's never been a better time. It's the most incredible moment in history because think about it like this. You can start a business cheaper and easier than ever before. You've got access to all this incredible free technology to spread a message. You can find a team who might be working anywhere in the world. You can find customers who might be anywhere in the world with a problem that they want to solve. It used to be that if you wanted to start a small business not that long ago, you needed a huge amount of startup capital, especially if you wanted to be a global business or you wanted to have customers across America or around the world. That was a serious investment. And now lots of people who've got a TikTok account and a little shop, they've got customers in 12 countries and, they're away. So it is a pretty magical time. The reason I don't give you a clear answer on that is because we've got two systems at the moment. We've got something that is the dying industrial age system, which is the system that kind of went from the early 1800s to the 2000s. And that was like the system we all kind of grew up in and all of our institutions are based upon. And that system's in decline. And then we've got the rising digital age. And that digital age is a new system where you can live and work from anywhere, you can do business anywhere. So it has a new set of rules. So the reason I'm not giving you a clear answer is because it depends if you're playing by the old set of rules or the new set of rules.
Well, it seems like a lot of people say that they're worse off than their parents are. Is that actually the case, or are people just becoming a lot whinier?
Well, you are definitely worse off than your parents are if you're in that industrial age system. So like the peak of that industrial age system was the late 1900s. So that was the best time ever to have a normal job. Everything just kind of worked. It was the late stage industrial age. Everything was set up, everything was working, and nothing had really been disrupted by digital at that point. And now that we're 5 years past COVID was the thing that accelerated the digital transformation. It meant that everyone suddenly had to work from home and everyone had to figure out technology. Businesses had to take their business online. So it does come down to, if you are someone who has a very similar job to your parents, you're probably worse off than your parents. However, if your parents scratch their head and go, what the heck is this podcasting thing? And what do you mean that you have an Instagram account and you send people to a Shopify account, right? Then you're probably better off than your parents. So like most of my friends who work in the entrepreneurial space and have their own businesses, they earn more in a year than their parents might have earned in their entire career. And, they're sitting there saying, well, actually, the startup costs were lower than ever. I didn't have to take on VC capital. I can totally live on my own terms and by my own rules. So it really is this big distinction between industrial age or digital age. Which set of rules are you playing by? Old rules or new rules?
I love your story. I love your debates, all of the content you put out on YouTube. I think it's incredibly informative and you do such a good job at relaying your message. For those that are unfamiliar with you, who are you? Explain yourself in like a minute and what gives you credibility to talk on this.
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 21 years old and it grew to be a business that was doing 10.7 million in the first 3 years. Since then, I think I've done 7 startups that went 0 to $1 million in their first 12 months. I've had 3 businesses go north of 10 million. So I'm very much a startup founder. I get involved in starting things. My passion is starting things from scratch. Today, I run a group of 7 companies, which are a combination of businesses that I've started or bought. And I run an entrepreneur accelerator that's worked with 5,500 companies globally that helps them to stand out, scale up, and make a positive impact in the world. And I've written 5 best-selling books on entrepreneurship and startup culture.
So being someone that's built up so many different multi-million-dollar businesses, what opportunities at this exact moment would you say are the hottest? Because I feel like back in the day, it was Shopify dropshipping. I feel like for a moment in time, people wanted to be like day traders, and that hype has kind of died down.
Yeah, good.
What, like even Amazon FBA, that was a big one. What would you say right now are the main opportunities available?
So I want to answer this in 3 parts. Opportunity 1, opportunity 2, and then how to think about that question. So opportunity 1 is a personal brand linked to an elegant, scalable business model. So if you can build a personal brand, if you can find someone who has a personal brand, and let's call it, that they have 100,000 plus followers and they've got a good relationship with those followers, and then you can link that personal brand to an elegant, scalable business model, that is probably the number 1 opportunity in the world. And when you see this, you'll see it everywhere. So like, for example, this drink is Chris Williamson and his business partner, who are both influencers. They've both got big personal brands, and they figured out we can put a scalable business model on the back of that. You see this with Jay Shetty. You see this with Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. So you're going to start seeing everywhere that the influencers are not taking sponsorships anymore. They're just going to bolt businesses onto their own. They're going to do influence for equity. They're going to basically use their influence to generate enough cash flow to live on, and then the additional influence goes into building equity value of a business that's scalable. And this is going to be a really sensible, investable, scalable business opportunity for a long time. Now, if you don't have a huge brand, you can be the one who finds a good business and links it to a personal brand. You can be a partner to someone who has a personal brand. So that's opportunity number 1. That's probably one of the biggest opportunities in the world. Second biggest opportunity is the one Cody Sanchez talks a lot about, which is taking over a baby boomer business. Baby boomers are aged 61 to 79. They have more than half the economy in their hands. So 52% of all value is in the hands of a small group of people who are 61 to 79. They have something like 70% of all business equity. So businesses by valuation mostly are owned by baby boomers. But they're at that stage of life where they don't want to be running those businesses anymore. They want to pass them down. And there is a demand and supply imbalance of the number of people who want to pass over a business versus who they can pass that business to. And that represents a huge opportunity for younger people. Like one of the coolest things you could do, I was talking to some young guys the other day. They're going to be buying a landscape gardening business, and the business is in decline and has been in decline for about 4 or 5 years, and it still does more than 7 figures of revenue, but it's in decline. And as soon as they just went and did some testing where they knocked on a few doors, what we did is got them to take an iPad. You go, take a photo of the front of the house. You ask ChatGPT to show what this house would look like fully landscaped. Go up to the front door and say, hey, we've done a rendering of your house, what it would look like fully landscaped. And people go, wow, that's incredible.
ChatGPT's renderings, especially for like interior design,
I heard they're incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Their ability, if you just say, hey, make it like this style, you don't even know what the proper nomenclature is, like words for a certain style. You just tell, I want it a little bit more elegant, a little bit more hard angles and stuff like that. And it makes crazy renderings.
Yeah, it's wild and it's free. Like these are types of things that used to cost maybe a few $100s and take a few weeks. So there was no way you could possibly go door to door showing people what the house would look like. Anyway, that's an example where the baby boomer's not going to do that. They don't have the energy for it. They're not in that phase of life. But a younger person who takes over that business, vendor financed, they buy the business with the previous owner financing them into the deal. Then they apply some technology, they apply some energy, and away they go. They've got that.
Do you think this is something the average person can do though? Like with now that we can access, cheaper labor in all these different countries, and we have a global network and you have access to things like ChatGPT, that it's then decreased the bar in terms of like skill necessary for being a successful entrepreneur? Because the common argument against this is that not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Like, there's certain skills and maybe personality traits and character traits that are necessary in order to be an effective
I agree with that.
business
Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone should be an entrepreneur. With that said, everyone can be part of an entrepreneurial team, and you're going to have a lot more fun being part of an entrepreneurial team than being part of a big corporate. So if you have an experience, I think you had an experience of going into an investment bank when you were young and they just shoved you in a corner.
Oh, data entry.
Yeah. And got you doing data. And you just tried to say hello to the boss and he's like, you're not allowed to say hello to me directly.
Yeah.
Or the manager.
Chain of command.
Yeah, the shame of command,
yeah,
right?
Really. It was awful.
You are not allowed to talk to the boss, right, directly. Like that's the kind of nonsense that people put up with in corporate jobs. So, if you had have worked for an amazing founder with less than 10, 12 other people on the team, so not everyone can or should be an entrepreneur, but there are, you can be part of entrepreneurial teams. Entrepreneurship is a team sport. One role on the team is captain of the team, founder, that sort of thing. But there are plenty of other roles. Like in my entrepreneurial team, I've got a CFO and a COO and a chief revenue officer. I've got people on my team who are earning a lot of money. They've got equity ownership in the businesses. I might have started those businesses, but they are part owners in those businesses and they're earning a lot of money and getting a lot of value from it. So you don't have to, if you think being an entrepreneur means that you are a founder, that you're starting from scratch, not everyone can or should do that.
Who should not be an entrepreneur?
Well, you said the word average. If you've got enough self-awareness to say I'm average at the moment, I'm just an average person, go join a team with someone who's above average. That's totally normal. It's normal to be average. Average is normal, right? So we all think that we should be in the top 1%. 99% of people can't be in the top 1%, but we can get around those people. You did pretty well if you're on the same team as Michael Jordan back in the day. So I'm a really big believer that you do an entrepreneur apprenticeship. You do at least 2 years working around someone. I think you guys met through almost you were.
Yeah. It was,
email,
we all kind of had the same story of reaching out to someone who was successful in a space we were interested in, provided them with free work, which a lot of people don't like when we say,
gosh, people get so triggered when I say go and work for free.
Go and work for free.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You're going to get some hate comments now.
But the counter argument to that is, what if I'm supporting a family? I got 3 kids at home. I'm barely making ends meet. I come home at 8 p.m. I can't afford to work for free. And the people who can work for free have all of these things working in their favor.
Well, for starters, life's not fair. At no point in human history has it been fair. Just get over that idea that it should be fair and that, here's the thing. You've got 3 kids. That's not fair. That's amazing. That's an incredible blessing that your family's got that some other people don't have, right? So count your blessings for what you've got. But I'm a father of 3 kids. There are certain things you just can't do. There are young entrepreneurs who can outperform me because I also have a commitment to drop my kids at school every morning, and they're working when I'm dropping the kids at school. That's it. That's fine, right? We all have. There's no fairness. There's just trade-offs. Now, what you need to do is find a way. So finding a way might be that 80% of your time you do the stuff that pays the bills, and you take on a little bit of additional work in order to get your foot in the door. All we're talking about with work for free is normally that advice is pitched at young people who don't have much experience to leverage, and it's just get your foot in the door. You're not actually working for free. What you're doing is you're providing your labor in exchange for higher level experience than you could normally get your hands on. So there's an exchange going on. It may not be a direct cash exchange, but the exchange is, hey, I'm going to invite you in above your pay grade, right? And you're going to be in an environment where you get to jump up. I have got 12 ex-employees who are now millionaires because they came and worked for me and around me, and they did 2 to 3 or 4 years working for me, and then they went off and did their own business, or they took over their family business, and now they're multimillionaires. My ex-assistant took over his father's business that was $500,000 a year, and it's now $5 million a year. 2 young guys who were on my sales team, they met on the sales team. They came up with their idea on the sales team. They left. They started a business and they sold it for $7 million. So, and these guys are early 20s. So, realistically, if you want to work in close proximity with me, a lot of people would pay a lot of money to do that. So
it's like paying for college.
Yeah, exactly. So people go, oh, you can't work for free, but you can go to college and get into debt, right?
See, it's so funny. I said the same thing with Caleb Hammer. And he had one of his employees with him, and his employee was talking about how much he was making. And I said, I thought that was great that he's getting paid for this because people would pay Caleb for that same job. And people got so upset that here I am advocating for free labor. But at the same time, I'm thinking, like, when you look objectively at the opportunity that what Caleb is doing and how much that's valuable to somebody else who wants to do that. I mean, like, if people should, like, his value, I think, is worth like 80 grand just to pay Caleb.
Exactly.
Just to see how his team works.
But just look at anyone who's a high performer. They ate glass for several years in one form or another. Ed Sheeran busking on the streets day after day after day while writing his songs, getting his performance skills. You get the comedians who do like years of like little tiny clubs and then they get their breakthrough. So it's just a way to accelerate. And by the way, you don't have to do that. It just takes longer. Like working for free is just an accelerant. So all we're talking about is, do you want to accelerate the time that it takes? It's no different to this. When I first arrived in London, 2006, I arrived with a suitcase and a credit card. And I don't know anyone, I've never been above the equator in my life, born in Australia, moving to London for the first time. And I thought, okay, I want to accelerate the time that it takes to be successful in this city. So I rented a private dining room at a nice restaurant for 30 people. I reached out and found the who's who in the business scene that I was entering, and I invited them to a private dinner. And there was 28 people who came along. They mostly came to see each other. So I kind of reached out and said, hey, look, I'm coordinating. This is the guest list. These are the people who I'm inviting. And they were, oh, okay, I'll go because so-and-so's there. So I brought together this group of 28 people. I pay for dinner. I put the whole thing on. During the dinner, I stand up and I say, hey, look, I'm Daniel. I've just arrived. I'm young. I'm 25. I've just arrived from Australia. It's my first time in London. I'm looking to start a business. Ideally, I'd love to have a one-to-one meeting with you. I've just joined a great little members club for business. If you're happy to have a meeting with me, I'm going to head round and make a time. So I go around and I book 24 one-to-ones. I then do, in the following 2 weeks, I do 24 one-to-ones, and out of all of it, I think I agreed 20 joint venture affiliate partnerships where they were going to email their email list and help promote my launch event. Day of launch event, 800 bookings come in for our first launch event. I think a total was about 3,000 or 4,000 across the rest of the week. In our first 6 months, we did £4 million worth of sales. Now, 5% of businesses in the UK get to $1 million or more ever. I did £4 million worth of sales in our first 6 months. Now, why did we do that? Because I accelerated it. I said, for the cost of putting on a dinner party and buying 30 people dinner, for the cost of buying cups of coffee and creating a deal. Oh, by the way, the deal for them to get involved with my launch was also, I'm going to run a launch event. The launch event is going to have a ticket price, and 200% of the ticket price goes to you as an affiliate commission. So the ticket price was like 30, and I said, we pay 60. So for every person who pays 30, we'll pay you 60.
How'd you afford to do that? Was there upsells at the event that you banked on?
Well, we just knew that we were gonna sign up clients. So I set it up from the beginning that when we've signed up all those clients, we'll owe you the commissions, but we will owe you that amount of money. I just built a little system and executed.
But what do you think you had at, in your early 20s that the average person now in their early 20s doesn't have? Because most people probably look at themselves like, I'm either broke or I'm in college debt and I'm struggling to get by. You probably were somewhat in the same circumstance, but you still had the ability to make something of it. What differentiated you from the
What differentiated me is 2 years working for a mentor. So I worked for this guy called John from 19 to 21. Here's the super lucky thing.
Of course, with everything going on with the economy these days, you have to ask yourself, what does the future hold for business? Because if you ask 9 different experts, you're going to get 10 different answers. From a bull market to bear market, things are going up, interest rates are going down. Be very helpful to have a crystal ball at this point.
But until that happens, over 41,000 businesses have already future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. You see, with just one unified business NetSuite's management suite, you have just one source of truth, giving you all of the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. Plus, with real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. When you're closing your books in days, not weeks, you're spending way less time looking backwards and way more time on what's next.
So whether your company is running millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Oh, and speaking of opportunity, right now you can download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning when you go to netsuite.com/iced. Again, the guide is free for you at netsuite.com/iced. netsuite.com/iced with the link down below in the description. Thank you so much, NetSuite, for sponsoring this podcast. And now let's get back to the episode.
So I worked for this guy called John from 19 to 21. Here's the super lucky thing. I dropped out of university. At university, I was running nightclub parties, and I was the cool entrepreneur who was running the nightclub parties. And I was really frustrated that university was not teaching me anything about actual business, and none of the lecturers had done any business themselves. They were all academics. So I decided on a whim that I'm not going back. I quit after year one. And I go to work for this guy who was doing a startup, and it was a disaster. Like, it was just a total shit show. And then I asked around my friendship group and my family group, is there anyone else who knows someone who's starting a new business? I want to be part of a startup. And my dad, through a friend, said, hey, there's this guy called John. He previously has had successful businesses, marketing agencies, and these sorts of businesses. He's doing a startup. Do you want to go and he's willing to have a half an hour meeting with you if you want to come and join his team. So I go and knock on the door, and it's the best house I've ever been in. Like, it's the first time I'd ever set foot in a beautiful designer, like, special house with a big door and all of this sort of stuff. And I walk in and I'm like, I'm not leaving until I get the job with this guy. We ended up talking for 3 hours, and it was clear that there was really good mentor chemistry there. He was 37, I was 19, and he we just vibed. And basically, he said, you can come and join my team. I'm going to give you all sorts of jobs. You're going to be my shadow. And for 2 years, I shadowed him around. I did sales, lots of sales. I did lots of marketing meetings. I did hiring and firing and all this sort of stuff. So I got 2 years working for John. We went from 0 startup to 6 million in the first year. We went from working out of his kitchen to 60 people in an office in year 2. So I got the experience of what that was like.
At what point did you start accepting salary from him?
At no point. So I was commission only. So commission only sales, because that was his condition. He basically said, you've got no skills yet. But he said, you can be a commission only salesperson. He said, but on top of commission only selling, I'm going to give you all these other jobs, because my pitch to him was, I want to be an entrepreneur like you. I want to learn from you. He's like, okay, so I'm going to teach you a lot, but you're going to do commission only selling. And then when you've got any spare time, you're going to do all this other stuff that I need you to do as well. And he was an amazing mentor, by the way.
What would you say are like the key things that you took away from him that then allowed you to go and build these several different businesses?
Lesson number 1, everything is downstream from lead generation. Lead generation is like your primary first mover. You need people's attention. You need to know who they are. You need to know that these people are interested. So any business that I start with lead generation. And that I got from John, very early days. So if I was to launch a new business, let's say I was going to launch a podcast studio, and I'm thinking I'm going to have like an actual space, a physical space, people can rent it and all that sort of stuff, right? I'm just thinking because we're in a podcast. I'm not going to buy any equipment. I'm not going to lease a space. I'm not going to do anything that costs money. All I'm going to do is launch what's called a waiting list campaign. And that waiting list campaign is basically, we're launching a studio in Las Vegas. It's for anyone who wants to have a podcast. You want to do more than 10 episodes a year. If that's you, register for the waiting list, answer 5 questions, and then we'll get back to you when we're ready to launch. If I can get 150 people to join the waiting list, then I'm going to progress to round 2, like as in the second thing we'll do. But ultimately, I'm not going to advance that idea if I can't generate leads. So what most people do is they do it the other way around. They try and spend $100,000 setting up a podcast studio and then see if they can get people to book in. And I'm like, no, we don't spend anything unless we know we've got the bookings. So I'm looking for lead generation first. So that the first thing that John taught me is everything is downstream from lead generation. You have to be amazing at lead generation if you want to be in business.
Yeah, one thing I really liked, you had a great debate with Gary's Economics,
Yeah.
Diary of a CEO. Got quite heated.
It
at
did.
some times. And what's interesting is that it seemed like on YouTube, a lot of people, or at least the top comments, agreed with Gary. But on Twitter,
Yeah.
everyone was agreeing with you. And I saw the stark difference between where people were hanging out and congregating online in terms of like which belief they aligned with. But for those who haven't seen it, Gary argued that the system is rigged and the average young person is getting poorer, while you argued for entrepreneurship and fewer barriers. What do you think he got most wrong in his view on how to fix inequality?
I think his solution for inequality may have worked 50 years ago, maybe 60, 70 years ago, because we lived in a world back then where the wealthiest people had physical locations. They had physical businesses. If you were wealthy 60, 70 years ago, the 1950s, you probably owned a factory or an office. You had people in that office, and there was no way you were going to run that remotely. Like it was impossible that you could move to Dubai and have a remote, business. So you could overtax people. It was very, very difficult for people to just throw their toys out the pram and leave and be fine about it. The issue that Gary's not taking into consideration now is that the rules have fundamentally shifted. I go to a gym in London, and I asked my trainer, who owns this gym? Oh, it's an Australian guy. I'm like, oh yeah, like is he around here? He's like, no, he lives in Australia. And it's like, well, how does he run this gym in London? Oh, he just like via Zoom. He's got a manager and he runs it remotely. So you can have almost any business that you just run remotely now, that you can be anywhere in the world. So the issue that Gary, he's not considering second and third order consequences. So you ramp up taxes on wealth and all of that. And of course, it's kind of like, imagine if I said to you, look, winning tennis is pretty easy. All you have to do is just serve the ball really hard and ace, just ace them. And if you keep doing that, well then, you'll win all the points. You say, yeah, but you're up against Roger Federer. He knows how to return the serve. Like he knows what to do next. So it's like ramp up the taxes on the rich and wealthy entrepreneurs, and they're like, oh, okay, this is no longer an attractive country. I'll just move my company somewhere that is attractive to do it. In the UK, 1% of people pay 30% of taxes, 10% of people pay 60% of the taxes. So you don't need many people to leave in order to crash the economy.
Why do you think there's so much inequality, though? Because you hear people saying that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer.
Now that is the question, and that is the question Gary should be asking. His answer for why is there inequality is because inequality creates inequality. So it's a circular reasoning. There's inequality because there is inequality, and the inequality gets worse because of the inequality. The reason for inequality, all inequality, is an advantage, right? Think about it just logically. If there's inequality in a sports team, one sports team has an advantage, right? So what is it? Maybe this team's taller. Maybe this team's been training harder. Maybe this team is a rookie team versus a professional team. Whatever it is, there's always an advantage. So the question is, what's the advantage? Like, what is the advantage right now? The biggest advantage is technology. And technology creates inequality. And a simple example would be if we all were up against each other in a marathon race, and I've got a bicycle and you guys are running on foot, we don't have to think too hard about who's going to win, right? My technological advantage, if I have a piece of technology that I can leverage and you're not leveraging that same technology, if I read the rule book and it said you can either run or cycle, and you guys go, well, historically it's always been running, so I'm going to do it the traditional way of putting on my laces and running with my running shoes. I'm like, well, the rules changed. You can use a bicycle now. In fact, you can use a car. I'm going to use a car, right? So I do my 26 miles in a car, enjoying the air conditioning and texting at the same time. You guys are running your asses off, sweating it out. And it's like, well, there's a massive inequality in our finishing times because I leveraged technology and you didn't leverage technology.
Yeah.
So technology is the advantage. The reason that society is dividing in two is because especially AI has two superpowers. Superpower number one is the ability to get you to consume way more than you thought. You go on TikTok thinking, oh yeah, I'll just have a little look at TikTok for 10 minutes. 2 hours later, you're still scrolling. That's technology. That's an algorithm. That's AI that did that to you. It hacked your attention. When you've got a cat and there's a laser pointer, and the laser pointer looks like something to attack, and the cat goes running after it, its primitive brain can't keep up with the fact that there's this thing called a laser pointer. We are now that cat chasing dopamine through these scrolling mechanisms, and plenty of people now have 6-7 hours a day on their screen. So the AI is doing that to us. It's creating hyper consumers. So half the population, or more than half the population, is going down the hyper consumption route. And then the second piece of superpower for AI is hyper creator. So if you're using AI to create stuff, you're creating all these things with the support of AI. Now you can do superhuman work. So there are people in my circle, I bet you guys as well, where I say, oh, what are you working on at the moment? They're like, oh, I've got a book on the go. I'm organizing a conference. We're doing a retreat for this. We're launching a SaaS product. I've got a team of 10 people who are working on this. And I've got some people in the Philippines who are like outsourcing to this and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, wow, how are you doing this with like just a small dynamic little team? It's like, well, we use a lot of tech. We've got an amazing tech stack. So these people are using technology to their advantage. These people are being used by technology to their disadvantage. And that is the fundamental wedge. This is the bifurcation of society, and it's going to get so much worse by 2030.
Isn't this just going to continue, like you said, just getting worse and worse and worse, making it harder for the average person to compete? Because the way I see it is that maybe 50 years ago, you had every local economy served by those few businesses. And so it was easy to kind of spread things around, or people could earn a pretty good living being in one town, serving that
That's
town.
it.
But now you're competing against Amazon and one big giant retailer who's able to undercut everything.
Yeah.
And then they just keep getting bigger. And it's like, how do you compete against something that big? And isn't this just going to continue getting worse?
The penalty for being average has never been so severe. But the payoff for being great has never been so high. Now, are you familiar with a distribution called a bell curve?
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite of a bell curve is a power law. So the Industrial Revolution moved everything to an even distribution on a bell curve, where essentially everyone's life fit within a nice little average bell curve distribution. Most doctors aren't the same as all other doctors. Even around the 1950s and 1960s, blue-collar workers earned pretty much the same as white-collar workers. Like it was it might have been 10 or 20% difference, but it was mostly the same neighborhoods and the same people and all of that sort of stuff. So everything had moved towards this bell curve. Digital technology moves everything onto a power law. So in the world of dating, 1% of daters do 90% of the people who want to date them.
Yeah, Jack.
It's Jack's fault, right? He's lying about all of his stats here. He's got his photoshopped pictures online. And so what happens with power laws is you get something like the 1% that does at least 30%. And technology moves everything from a bell curve to a power law. So it really does do this. Now, there are a new set of rules that will allow you to build your own mini power law where you can carve out a micro niche, that you can build a brand within that micro niche, and you can actually have your own little power law where you're the king of that power law. That does exist. The biggest thing I keep coming back to in this is that there's the old set of rules and the new set of rules. The old set of rules worked really well. So prior to 2000, the benefits of being average were huge, probably the best in human history. In all of human history, it was the best time to be average. Just an average person did well. If you were average, you got a house, you got a car, you got a holiday. You didn't have to take on lots of debt. You got education, you got rising wages, income security, retirement security, healthcare. Like all of it was packaged up for the middle of the bell curve. And all they said is just play by the rules and you'll get all of this stuff. And the middle of the bell curve's there. After 2000, we moved slowly and then rapidly towards this power law. People are like, hey, I'm playing by the rules. I'm a good average person, right? And it's like, yeah, the penalty for being average is now severe. You can't be average. I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying this is the way.
Right, you're saying it's how it is.
I'm just observing what is. Like I can only play the cards that I've been dealt. If I could wave a magic wand and go back to 1999, I'd say, fantastic. Like let's freeze in time. Let's have that economy. Let's get rid of everyone's smartphone. You can all have a Nokia 3210. And we'll take away social media or whatever. That would probably be good for most people. But I can only play the cards we're dealt.
Let's play devil's advocate for a second in that debate between you and Gary. His main points, if you were to argue how they are correct, what would you say?
Well, for starters, his identification of the problem is bang on. He's raising the alarm on the problem, and he should be raising the alarm on the problem because most politicians still think that it's 1960 as well, right? So all the politicians are caught in the past. He's raising a red flag and saying, hey, there's a huge problem and it's getting worse. However, if you look at something called the clinical method, which is how doctors and how the medical industry works, there is the problem, there is what's causing the problem, and then there is the treatment plan that's appropriate for those causes. Gary just is stuck on the problem. And the annoying thing is we all agree, like everyone can see the problem. That's not pointing at a fire doesn't make you a firefighter. It just says, okay, you notice that the building's on fire. That's great. Screaming about it. Okay, good. We all understand the building is on fire. So what he does really, really well is he brings attention to the fact that there is a big problem, that a lot of people who are playing by the rules are not getting ahead. A big section of society, the rug is being pulled from under them. So that's fantastic. Where I worry is that he's jumping from being extremely good at articulating the problem to then just going, the solution is this. And what most people who are watching him are doing is they're going, because he's so good at articulating the problem, he must have a really good solution. And those things are not necessarily correlated. Sometimes people are good at understanding the problem, but they don't identify the cause or the right treatment plan. So you actually have to have all three of those things in the chain in order to fix something. You have to problem, cause, and treatment.
It seems like he's really emphasizing the victim mindset, though, and getting people hooked on this emotional feeling like it is impossible for me, the system is rigged against me, I'm the underdog, and therefore I should be outraged, and there's nothing I could do about it, but I gotta follow Gary.
Like, by the way, I get it. Like, it sucks. It really sucks. We all went to a schooling system, and the schooling system taught us how to be and how to behave and gave us a set of rules. And now if you play by those rules, you don't get ahead. And that really does suck. And it feels like we've now... The other interesting thing too is that when I was growing up, you had almost no visibility as to what the lives of a wealthy person looked like. Like, you knew that maybe they had a Rolls Royce or maybe that they had a Ferrari. You kind of drove past big houses and you might have wonder what the people who live in those houses do, right? But you didn't really have a lot of visibility into that. Today, you open your phone and it's just, this guy's got a new Lamborghini and, she's now hanging out in Thailand, having an amazing holiday, and living the dream. And you go through and you're scrolling through and you're going, gee, my life really sucks. I'm on the wrong side of this. And obviously, it's amplified by social media, this discontent. So I get the outrage, but outrage doesn't solve anything. Like, you can either wait. Here's the choices you've got. You can either wait for the entire economic system of the world to change and to go hyper-socialist, perfectly redistribute the wealth, not crash the economy like it does every single other time they implement socialism. Or you can say, hey, guess what? The rules have changed. Some people know those rules. I can learn from those people. I can play by those rules. I've got to throw away some of the stuff that I learned in the past. I've got to join an entrepreneurial team, learn from a new mentor, right? Go through a bit of a process. It's not like the money has disappeared off the planet. The money's there. Like, we have money on this planet. It's just that it's not flowing down the same rivers that it used to flow down. Got to go and find the new rivers.
Now, while we're on this subject, we talk nonstop about managing your money smarter. Like, it's one thing to make money, but keeping it, growing it, and creating a future with it is another thing entirely.
That's why we're really excited about today's sponsor, Chime, because they're helping millions of people make real progress with their money. With Chime, there are no monthly fees, no minimum balance requirements, and no surprise overdraft fees. Plus, you can overdraft up to $200 fee-free with SpotMe. And if you set up direct deposit, you can even get your paycheck 2 days early. Need your money even sooner? Chime's My Pay lets you access up to $500 of your paycheck before payday with no mandatory fees or interest. And guys, we've all had those moments where you overdraft on accident. I mean, it is so brutal getting hit with that $30 fee. I know it's happened to me several times. With Chime, they spot you instead. In fact, they've spotted members over $30 billion so far. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. You can open up your account in just 2 minutes at chime.com/coffee. Once again, that is chime.com/coffee with the link down below in the description. Chime feels like progress. Banking Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply out of network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Chime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. Thank you so much to Chime for sponsoring this episode, and back to the podcast. Okay, we have a little thing I want you to react to.
When people sidestep that and say, okay, I'm not going to get into university debt, I'm just going to go off and actually figure out how the world works, there's actually loads of opportunities.
Okay, so I guess we've sorted it then. All of our viewers need to do is go and buy Dan's book, become an entrepreneur and become a millionaire. It's that easy. Why weren't you guys doing it to begin with? They're idiots. The viewers are idiots. They should be just being more entrepreneurial. It's as simple as that. More entrepreneurial, start a business. Listen, I come from East London, okay? My friends can't feed their kids, okay? And if it was as simple as going out and being an entrepreneur, I can bet you they would do it. I can bet you they would do it. I'm sick of multimillionaires telling kids who can't afford to turn the heating on, you just need to be more entrepreneurial. It's sick, Dan. It's sick. But this gives people mental illness. It gives people mental illness. Tell them the truth, okay? We, your older generation, we took the opportunities and now it is almost impossible to get out of poverty. And don't just stand up there and wave, your millions of pounds in front of them and say, if you were entrepreneurial like me, you could do it, you could have it. Because it's sick because they can't. They can't feed their kids, Dan. They can't turn the heating on. Don't tell them to be more entrepreneurial. Fix the system that drives more and more and more of them into poverty every generation.
I find it very strange. I've got a bit of trauma from being around Gary. Yeah. Gary gives me anxiety.
I could see almost a recoil.
Oh, yeah,
that gives you depression.
Yeah, that particular point. What's the question, or did you just want to trigger me?
No, I just wanted to hear what would be your...
Well, I mean, he says at the end, fix the system. How? How do you want to fix the system? Because when you ask him, how do you want to fix the system? He says, subscribe to my YouTube channel and I'll tell you what to do in the future. That's what he said at the end of the debate. So he's just screaming, I'm sick of it, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm sick of it too. We need to fix the system. Okay, what do you want to do? So one of his main solutions is wealth taxes. So there's so many problems with wealth taxes. They've been tried 15 times across Europe. They got rolled back 11 times. And these are like socialist countries that rolled them back because they just don't work. They cause a wealth exodus. It's impossible to quantify what is wealth. Because on any given day, markets fluctuate up and down. People then take evasive action to fluctuate the value of their assets down.
Could I get credits because my portfolio always goes down?
Yeah, you could. Right? No, under Gary's law, you can't.
Probably
right?
Not under Gary's law.
Oh, okay.
You should be able to, but not under Gary's.
Gary just looks at you and says, you look too rich. We're going to take what you've got, right? He's very clear about just wanting to punish the rich for being rich. Look, every time these kind of socialist ideas. I've got lots of friends who grew up in Eastern Europe where they tried all of these redistribution methods, and they tried wealth taxes and they tried super high taxes, and it crashed their economy. A great example is Poland. Poland was one of the poorest countries under socialism in the whole of Europe, and now after 40, 50 years of capitalism, it's one of the wealthiest countries. It's the fastest growing. Out of all of Europe, Poland is the one country that is sticking most closely to capitalist principles, and their economy is booming. So free markets, what sucks is that socialism sounds like a really great idea, but it delivers horrific results. Capitalism sounds like a horrific idea, and it actually delivers amazing results. So we have this issue where, Gary's screaming, fix the system, Dan, just fix the system. Okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Because ultimately, what he's describing is, the UK government has already done high taxes, and it's been a disaster. We found out this week that we've collected 15 billion less than we were expecting for the last period, I think 90 days. So 15 billion of taxes wiped out because high tax rates equal lower taxes collected.
It's funny you mentioned that. In Los Angeles, they just enacted a measure called ULA, which is basically a mansion tax. Any property over $5 million in the city or county of Los Angeles subject to this additional tax of 5%. So if it's $4.9 million, no tax. If it's $5 million, a $1 extra, there's a 5% tax on that. They thought that it would raise all this extra revenue that they could then put towards the homeless problem of Los Angeles. After a year of going through this, they raised substantially less revenue,
taxes,
even though they had a higher tax on those properties, simply because people said, I'm not going to sell.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to pay it. Or I'm going to structure my property differently so that it sells under the $5 million amount. And so maybe it's worth 5.2, but I'm going to sell it for 4.9 and then throw in the furniture for that extra little bit. And those are two separate transactions.
Or genuinely the market just moves down. Like the buyers won't pay over $5 million themselves.
Yeah.
So
everything's shifted downwards. Yeah. Those 5.1 properties are worth 4.8.
And also people have choice. So I know that plenty of people have moved out of California and they've come here to Vegas.
That's what we've done.
Joe Rogan. I mean, how much did it just cost California to lose Joe Rogan? Tens of millions. Elon has moved his head office out to Texas. So, I mean, these are the high profile examples, but there's thousands of these happening every month where smaller businesses, and also accounting firms, they go and set you up in Delaware. You might live in California, but your company is over in a different place, So, it's very easy to say, it's easy to win tennis, just slam the ball as hard as you can and ace the other player. Okay, but you're up against the Roger Federers of the world. They can return the serve. They know how to. They play tennis too. So whatever the government comes up with, remembering this, the brightest people don't work for government. The dumbest, laziest people work for government. So the smartest, hardest working people don't work for government. So the idiots come up with rules, and then the smart people go, this is just how we get around those rules.
I liked your advice though. When your response to Gary, and you said, if I heard your advice when I was younger, I never would have started. I would have been so discouraged by what you have to say that I wouldn't have even tried and I wouldn't be here today. And I agree with you. When I was younger, I would look to other people. Tim Ferriss was a huge inspiration with his book, The 4-Hour Work Week.
Me too.
And his example of a guy in Malibu making $60,000 a month and being able to drive his Lamborghini down PCH. And I remember reading this at
silly,
18, 17 years old.
It makes a big difference.
It just thinking that that's possible.
Yeah.
Just open the opportunity that now I think, wow, if this guy could do it, I could do it too.
It's interesting. I think it was a couple of your how I make X amount per month on YouTube videos that for me motivated me to be like, okay, well, if this guy can do it, I feel like I could get involved too and I could start making money. And it's funny because now he can't make those videos because people are like, you're just bragging. You're just,
it's interesting.
The amount of comments on those videos that were positive, where people were like, I couldn't believe you could make this on YouTube. And it's inspired me to start my own business, to get on YouTube, to make a brand for myself. Can't make them anymore.
It's interesting. It worked up into a certain degree. And then beyond a certain point,
you hit a critical mass.
It's either that I can't provide new value because everything is exactly the same and there's nothing new I could say about it, or it becomes an amount that just becomes unattainable or unrelatable to people, and then it just almost serves the exact opposite intention as I meant for it.
Yeah, look, young men are pretty simple creatures. We need to have a pathway to get ahead, and I think a lot of people are angry because the traditional pathways just aren't working, and I get that. The problem with Gary and I, we were talking past each other. There was parts where we're talking about the system, and then we're talking about the impact of that on personal individuals, and because of the emotions were running hot, and a lot of curiosity had evaporated out of the room at that point. The best conversations are where everyone is at the table with a spirit of curiosity. Let's see if we can come together. Because an amazing conversation would have been, Gary, you've got a great point. Let's brainstorm how we could fix, you want to fix the system, let's talk about it. And let's put all options on the table. Hey, Dan, you've got a good point that wealthy people can just get up and leave. Let's think about how we could potentially, fix the system in some way. So, and also let's look at what the underlying cause. The underlying cause is technology. You've got to keep that in mind. The reason this is all happening is we all used to live in walled gardens, special little walled gardens. So a town was a walled garden. It was very, very unlikely that someone in Las Vegas had to compete with someone in Los Angeles, or had to compete with someone in the Philippines, or had to compete with a tech product in Silicon Valley. Right up until even 2010, that was probably not happening. But today, if you're setting up a business, a traditional business, it's very likely that there is a remote working solution, that there is a interstate solution, that there is a tech solution. So we pulled out the walls of the walled garden. We basically said, everyone here is in competition with everyone there. Because, by the way, in the last 20 years, incomes have exploded in the developing world. You go to southern parts of, Bangalore or southern India, like they've gone from maybe $20, $30 a day to 10, 15 an hour in a fairly short space of time. Same as the Philippines. The Philippines economy is growing at 6, 7, 8% per year, and money's pouring into those places because of technology has made remote working a viable option. So if you imagine that the bathtub like has a big divider in the middle, and this half's full and this half's empty, if you pull that divider out, it's going to equalize. Same sort of thing. If you have a protected class of people in the USA and the developing world or technology over here, and you pull the divider out, this one's going to go down and this one's going to come up.
So you're saying that divider in that analogy would be technology, but technology...
No, the divider is geography. Right, geography kept everyone separate.
But the thing that pulls the divider out would be
technology. Thing that pulled it out is technology.
Right. So that's kind of the solution that causes this fission between like those who are successful and those who are not successful. But technology is still somewhat of an external variable. Like if you were to draw this to a more internal approach, what would you say is the main variable that differentiates between those who are successful and those who are not? Would it be motivation problem, a knowledge problem?
Let me start right at the beginning. Okay. So first thing you want to do is you want to work for a company that has less than 10 employees and you get to work with the founder. This is if you want, by the way, this is if you want to go on that journey. I'm not saying everyone should or can, but this is if you want to do this. So rule number one is get yourself around a mentor. So you have to find yourself a job with a company that has less than 12 people. There's a founder. They have regular team meetings. You get first-hand contact with the founder. You're in an environment where you can see what's going on. The problem with big companies is they just put you over here. They isolate you. You have no idea how things actually work. Inside a company of less than 12 people, you actually get to see this is how we make sales, this is how much we spend on ads, this is how we deal with customer complaints, this is how we keep customers happy. So all that stuff is visible to you. So you're going to learn a lot. There's three things that you're trying to build. You're trying to build self-awareness, so you learn about yourself. Commercial awareness, you learn about what makes money, and access to resources. You know where to get stuff. You know how to get technology, you know how to raise money if you need it, you know how to run ad campaigns if you want to run ad campaigns, you know how to do a joint venture deal, right? So self-awareness, commercial awareness, and access to resources. So you're trying to do that through work. The purpose of work now is to get those three things. That's why you go to work, for those three things. Once you've got those three things, you then want to do little mini side hustles that are open and shut within 90 days. So side hustles with 90-day open and shut windows. So what you might do is say, I'm going to run a nightclub party, right? Or I'm going to sell 500 hoodies on Etsy, or I'm going to take on 3 clients who I can provide a service to. Or I'm going to do a setup service, right? So you're going to come up with little mini projects to see what works and what doesn't work. So for me personally, at my time when I was 18, I was selling roses door to door, and I would buy the roses for 40 cents and sell them for $4. That was one little side hustle. I did underage nightclub parties. So we did nightclub parties for 14 to 17-year-olds, and that was amazing. I did all the usual stuff like car washes and garage sales and all of those kind of things. So whatever it is, you're trying to come up with a 90-day experiment for you to actually see how you do in that space. So
you've identified it basically as a knowledge issue. If people had the proper knowledge, then they would be successful.
Yeah, so there's self-awareness, which is understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding your skills, understanding whether you're an A player, a B player, a C player yet, right? So there's that. There's commercial skills or commercial awareness and commercial skills, so that your ability to execute things. And the reason you need those 3. You can't just have 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3. You have to have those 3 things.
How much of success is luck versus skill?
A lot of it's luck. But luck is, here in Vegas, we know that next to the word luck, you've got something called the odds. Right? So you've got luck and you've got odds of luck happening. So if we go to certain casino games, we know that, like, for example, a black or a red at the roulette wheel is almost 50-50. It's slightly off 50-50 because of the double green things, right? So that's called the odds. So even though success is largely about luck, there are things that you do to rapidly increase the odds. So you can go from a 1 in 50 chance to a 1 in 2 chance through certain behaviors. So luck is definitely going to play a role in everybody's success, but you can change the odds dramatically, change the odds. So for example, sitting at home watching Netflix decreases your chances of any luck happening. There's very little luck that happens around watching Netflix. Going out and networking with a group of entrepreneurs who are having a meetup massively increases the odds of luck. Having a mentor who's super successful already rapidly increases the chances of luck happening. Reading books about how business works, listening to podcasts, watching videos, this is going to dramatically increase the amount of luck that happens in your life. So I can't guarantee that everything goes perfectly. It's not like 100% guarantee, but I can definitely say that you go from like very, very low odds to quite high odds through behavior.
Do you think people are lacking in common sense? Because a lot of what you say seems to be common sense. Like, go and do these things. Don't sit at home and watch Netflix.
The issue with common sense is you got to remember we went to a schooling system that was architected in the 1800s. About 1850 was when the schooling system really kicked in, and it was built around industrialized workforce. So the people who built the schooling system, they were trying to solve a problem, which was we need factory workers. We don't have enough factory workers. We need people who can come straight out of this environment and go to a factory environment. Prior to the schooling system, we used to do apprenticeships with our parents or our parents' friends. So it was very normal that you went to a church group and you kind of got the ABCs around Sunday school and church group and all that sort of stuff. There was something called dame schooling, which also happened around churches. So you got the very basics. But then you just pretty much, as soon as you were about 13, 14, you apprenticed. So you went and apprenticed working for, whoever your parents knew or your parents or whoever they knew. And you did these apprenticeships. And it was very entrepreneurial. Most people had access to small businesses or family businesses or all that sort of stuff. So that's how it was up until 1850. They wanted to break our spirit and start on a bell, finish on a bell, don't talk back, do what you're told, don't team up, right? A big theme in school is don't form teams, right? So they do not want you, like when you take a test, you don't take the test with your 3 best friends and like you work on, hey, do you know the answer to this? No. But in real life, of course you do this with 3 best friends, like you form teams. So what happens is people go off and they try and do everything on their own rather than building a little team together. In school, if you get a bad grade for maths, they say you need to work on your maths, right? You got to work on that weakness. In real life, you just get the CFO to do the maths and you go and work on your strengths. So you don't fix your weaknesses, you double down on your strengths in the real world. In the real world, if you are a disruptor or an attention seeker, then they put you on the front cover of Inc. magazine. But in school, if you're a disruptor or an attention seeker, they punish you for it. So there's all these things where these are natural behaviors that are very successful behaviors that you get punished for in school. And then you get out into the real world and say, hey, why isn't all this working? Like, why do I feel mismatched to the economy? And that's kind of what's happened.
I have 2 completely random off-topic questions, but I have to ask because I keep like thinking about it, so we need to address it. Has anyone ever told you look like Leonardo DiCaprio?
I've heard Leonardo DiCaprio.
I've heard weirdly.
I
don't know if it's this angle. It's like a little bit the hair.
Okay,
it's like the nose.
I get fat Justin Timberlake.
Okay.
And Zelensky.
That's funny.
So if
I could
Justin
see that.
Timberlake,
I think all of them together.
Zelensky, yeah.
And then also,
I can see
why do
that.
people from the UK call it maths? They pluralize it.
Maths.
Like I've always heard that, and I've just never.
Listen, we invented English. You have to catch up with what we say. I'll tell you a fun thing about English, about the American. You know how you guys have Z's instead of S's for like enterprise and all the words that end in. We do with an S.
Yeah.
Zed, yeah.
You guys have a Z instead of an S.
Z.
Yeah, a Z instead of an S. There was a massive wave of German immigrants. There were more German immigrants to the USA than English immigrants, and it was the Zs that came from Germany. So that's a little bit of the Germans came in and said we're going to do that with a Z.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So what role should the government play in all of this? Because it sounds like I was the same way. I thought school was a huge waste of time. I didn't want to apply any energy towards it. I went to a kindergarten briefly, and they pulled me out of the kindergarten. My parents did.
Was this recently? Because they should have pulled you out of the kindergarten.
Yeah, this is just like the other week I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, you're not meant to be there.
But they wanted everyone to line up on a line to go to like the break.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to stand on the line.
Yeah.
And they kept telling me to get in the line, and I didn't want to stand on the line.
You're not going to be a good factory worker.
Right. But that ended up being an issue that I was sent to like the principal's office because they wouldn't stand on the line.
Didn't conform.
And my parents saw the issue in that and took me out of that kindergarten and put me in a different one that was just like, the opposite.
We don't want you to conform. And that little moment probably formative for where you are today.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
But what role should the government play in all of this?
So we need to prepare people for the world that we're now going in. So there's definitely a change that is needed in the role of education. So let's start with that one. The old world of education is this long arc that you're going to do 15 years in education, then that ends. Then you're going to do about 25 years working for a manager, 10 years being a manager, 5 years being a leader, and then you're going to do 15 years of retirement, then die. That's the long arc that they want you to go on. That's the kind of the business model of production of people from the industrial age. If we think about what's coming, it's going to be very high velocity economy with multiple projects going at any given time. And it's going to be notice a problem or notice an issue, get together with one or two other people to discuss and research it, come up with a minimum viable solution, test it, see if it scales, scale up the team, scale up the tech, exit it, either make enough money to never work again or go on to the next problem and solve another problem. But if you imagine high velocity loops, in our career is going to be made up of lots of loops, and included in those loops is rapid learning and upskilling for the loop, and then moving on with something else. So in this little loop, I might need to learn the skills of public speaking because that's what's required in that one. In the next loop, I might need to learn some technology skills. So we need to have an education system that acknowledges that it's going to be lifelong learning, lifelong problem solving, high velocity, like plural things on the go at any given time. You look at people who are doing well right now, they got 5 or 6 things on the go. They have multiple businesses. They might be writing a book. They might be doing a podcast. They might, be a supplier to one business, and they might have another business themselves. So what they're doing is they're executing on a high velocity these little loops. So we need to study what are the dynamics of those fast, high velocity business or career cycles and train people for those fast cycles and say that your career is actually just going to be, in some projects you'll be the leader and in some projects you'll be the supporter. And that's fine, right? You might have 2 of those projects going at once where you're leading one and supporting on another. But we need an education system that prepares people for the world that we're going into. So that's definitely something that government should do. The main thing most governments need to do at the moment is actually step back and see what breaks and see what happens. Because all of our systems and institutions were built for a time that's come to an end, the industrial age. And now we need to see what actually works and what doesn't work. So for example, you needed to regulate, in the USA, it costs like 40 or 50 grand to have a hair salon license or something like this. It's like this crazy, like just to cut hair. And that was probably before Google star reviews, like Google reviews. Now, you don't need to regulate hair salons. Google reviews regulates hair salons. No one's going to go to a hair salon that has 2-star average reviews, right? So we have other systems that actually perform that function in society pretty rapidly.
I have a question for you. When is the last time you needed to see a doctor, but you pushed it off, made the excuse, I'm too busy, it'll heal on its own, or I don't even know which doctor to go to? I'm sure we've all been there. Booking a doctor's appointment can sometimes feel so daunting, but fortunately with our sponsor Zocdoc, there's no reason to delay because they make it incredibly easy to find and book a doctor who's right for you.
For those unaware, Zocdoc is a free app and website that allows you to search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors, and then you could click to instantly book an appointment. You could filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, nearby are a good fit for any medical needs you might have and who are highly rated by verified patients. And then once you find the right doctor, you could see their actual appointment openings, choose a day and time that works best with you, and then click to instantly book a visit. Plus, the appointments made through Zocdoc typically happen fast, usually in just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You could even score same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to Zocdoc.com/iced to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/ICED, Zocdoc.com/iced with the link down below in the description. Thank you, Zocdoc, for sponsoring this episode, and now let's get back to the podcast.
I'm sure we've all dealt with bugs. Last summer, there was a trail of ants going all the way from the downstairs bathroom in my house, up the stairs into my roommate's bedroom. It was disgusting. So when the sponsor of today's video, Pestie, sent us their kit, I was actually pretty interested to check it out.
Pestie is a do-it-yourself pest control that allows you to protect your home easily and for a quarter of the cost. Like other pest control companies charge $800 a year. But with Pestie, you can get started at just $35 a treatment with a customizable plan based on your location, climate, and bugs.
The kit came with everything: sprayer, mixing bag, pesticides, gloves, and really clear instructions. It's super straightforward and only takes about 10 minutes to apply, and the way that the instructions are and how they prepare everything just so simply made me realize that this is something anyone can do.
And what's great is that Pestie customizes the treatment for your location, so it targets the exact bugs that you're most likely to deal with. It gets rid of over 100 types: ants, spiders, scorpions, roaches, you name it. Plus, it's kid and pet friendly, and they back it with a 100% bug-free guarantee or your money back.
Protect your home from bugs with Pestie at pestie.com/ICH to get 10% off your entire order with the link down below in the description. It's also at pestie.com/ICH, 10% off your entire order.
Thanks again to our sponsor, Pestie, and now let's get back to the episode. So what about taxes? Because that was a big part of your debate with Gary. You were proposing lower taxes, if anything, encourage business owners. And that's one of the reasons we moved to Nevada, was because of low taxes. They were very pro-business. And fun thing, but when I made that video saying that I'm leaving Los Angeles, I actually got an email from someone at the city council who was on like the business board thanking me for moving and said, we're so happy to have you. If there's anything we could do, please reach out. We're here.
Amazing.
Like, I loved that. I couldn't believe it. LA, they'd say, well, if you want to do this, you have to register for this additional tax. Like, I'm paying this 1% business tax to the city of LA for no reason at all. It's just and just every year.
And now look, and now they've cut off their nose to spite their face.
Yeah.
Because we all come to Vegas to come and see you, and your businesses run from
100%.
here, and so much of what they're missing out on. What we have to do is what's called going back to first principles. And going back to first principles is asking the question: what should a government be there for? Like, what's its purpose? And there are different answers to that question. So, like, the USA has traditionally said that the government there is to ensure individuals' rights, and it's all about freedoms and the rights of the individual and the rights for people to, for better or for worse, to have a free way of living, right? So the founding fathers, they tried to create a system of government that said that you are primarily an individual with agency and that you may screw up your own life, and that's on you. But the government, our job is to limit the powers of government so that you can screw up your life if you want to, or you can do well, but that's your life. You get to do it. In other parts of the world, they say the purpose of government is to make sure that we look after anyone who can't look after themselves, and that the government is there to have collective responsibility over the people. You're going to have less individual rights, but the government is going to provide more for you and all that sort of stuff. So the first thing is you have to go to first principles and say, what do we want our government to be? Like, what is the role of government? And we need to ask basic questions like, what is an economy for? Like, is an economy for becoming successful? Is an economy for getting needs met? Is an economy for preventing poverty? Like, what is it that we're trying to do? Then you go back to best practices, like what experiments have been run and how do you apply the knowledge of those experiments? And you kind of got to rebuild it from the ground up, because we've had such a fundamental shift because of technology. This technology thing is not a small thing. This is the last time this happened was the agricultural age, where everyone worked in farming. 90% of people worked in farming. And then there was this one day where two guys rocked up with a tractor and they went, and in 2 days they plowed the whole field. 97 people stood there and went, hey, wait a second, that used to take us 2 months. And these guys just did it with a tractor in 2 days. What are we all going to do? The minute that tractor plowed the very first field, that was a turning point. That was a moment where life would never be the same again. You will, as soon as that tractor works, we know that 97% of people in farming are out of a job. And it's only a matter of time. The clock is now ticking. So that's where we had to create a new economy with new rules called the industrial age. So we went from the agricultural age into the industrial age. We went from a feudal system and a colonial system into an industrialized modern system that we know. As soon as the very first AI writes a contract, we know that the legal profession is going to be profoundly impacted. As soon as the very first AI does a better job at diagnosing than a general practitioner doctor, we know that we have fundamental. These are tractor moments, and we've had hundreds of tractor moments that have just happened in the last 5 years. As soon as the average individual person can outsource and have an assistant in the Philippines, holy smokes, right? That should send tingles down most people. It's like, whoa, okay. So are you saying that the bookkeeper, the accountant, the bookkeeper, the personal assistant, all of these roles that used to be in an office, these can now be in the Philippines at a fraction of the cost and just as good? Okay, that fundamentally changes the economy. So we've had all these moments where technology has made things available, and we've got to say, we've got to rebuild the economy with that in mind.
Where do you think is the best place in the world to start a business?
So at the moment, depends. There's two types of businesses that you want. You either want a lifestyle business or a performance business. A lifestyle business is a business that's going to be typically between 1 and 5 million of revenue. It's going to have high 6-figure, maybe low 7-figure profit. It's built around fun, freedom, flexibility. It's going to be it's going to be like a dream lifestyle business. It's going to look good on Instagram. And that's going to be a lifestyle business. A performance business is one that you intend to sell. So you're working backwards from exit. You're going to try and get tens of millions of revenue, 7-figure, maybe even 8 figures of profit, and you're going to try and sell that for a life-changing amount of money. So you have to work out, are you trying to build a business that is built for exit, or you build a business that's built for Instagram, right? And lifestyle or performance, and then pick your spot there. The USA is still a phenomenal place. There's enormous amounts of money here, technology and support. If you're building a performance business, USA is the leading ecosystem in the world, but it may not be the leading ecosystem for lifestyle businesses.
If you're doing a lifestyle business, where would you go? What about Dubai?
Places like Dubai is amazing. It's difficult for you as an American citizen because you get taxed globally anyway. But for British people, we don't get taxed. If we leave the country, so many people are leaving because the number one way to avoid taxes in the UK is to just leave the country.
Mm-hmm. How does that work, by the way? Like, do you go to Dubai, make millions of dollars? Can you just come back to London, let's just say, and spend it?
It depends. Oh, you can definitely come back and spend it, but you have to spend less than 90 days in the country, or else you're deemed to be a tax resident back in.
Yeah, but let's just say hypothetically you spend 5 years in Dubai, you make $20 million.
Yeah,
and then you come back to London.
Yeah,
are you good?
A lot of people. Yeah, you've paid taxes on that amount of money, which is not zero. You've paid your zero, and now you're bringing money into the country. So you're now you're basically coming into the country as an external tax resident coming into it.
Why doesn't the United States do this? Aren't they the only country in the world that does this?
I think there might be 2 or 3 countries, but you're the main country that does this. You ring fence the population. I think it's historically because you had such a big economy that you didn't, you had such a disparity between the wealth of the United States and the rest of the world that someone figured out. I think it was Clinton who implemented this. It was like in the late 90s. It was Bill Clinton who came up with the idea of we're going to do exit taxes, and we're also going to do worldwide income taxes, because I think he saw the writing on the wall that people could just leave the USA, be slightly outside of the USA, and make all their money in the USA but live abroad.
Yeah. Speaking of all that, what are your thoughts on tariffs?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of things economists agree on, but most economists agree that trade wars are not good and tariffs are not good, unless they have like some really specific purpose. like if you really, for a strategic reason, want a particular thing to be manufactured inside your borders. But broad blanket tariffs, I mean, that's, it's kind of like, imagine the economy is a very delicate machine. Like it's a very delicate like watch or something like that, and pieces putting in, people tweak and tweak and tweak. Putting like massive tariffs on everything, that is that's like just hitting it with a baseball bat and seeing what happens.
Do you think we're on the brink of maybe a recession or like some sort of financial apocalypse?
It could be. Great question. That's going to go in the trailer for this video, isn't it?
I don't know.
Unfortunately, what Trump wants to have happen is probably not going to have happen. Like, it's very unlikely that manufacturing jobs are coming back to the USA. Anyone who brings manufacturing back to the USA, have you heard of the concept of a dark factory?
No.
Dark factory is essentially a factory that requires no workers other than some engineers who work on computers to manage the robots. So it's called a dark factory because they can theoretically just manufacture everything in the dark. So, I think there is there's a company that makes jeans, like Levi's jeans types thing, and it's something like hundreds of thousands of pairs of jeans that it produces, and it has like 12 employees because it just does everything from that principle. It's just totally fully autonomous. There's a steel plant in the USA that used to employ 30,000 people and produce 5 million tons of steel, and now does 8 million tons of steel, but with 2,000 people.
Wow!
Right? So like that is examples of like manufacturing that didn't leave; it stayed here. It just doesn't need that many people anymore. So the idea that you can erect tariffs and then suddenly all these jobs come back, it's highly unlikely. It's very unlikely that the USA is ever going to be gluing shoes together and doing that at a great, suddenly there's going to be this amazing boom for Americans to glue the Nike sole onto the thing. Like that strikes me as that's not going to happen.
So what do you think is the outcome to this? Because I have a hard time. People seem way too optimistic, and I'm just, from what I'm reading online, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be easily solvable anytime soon.
Yeah. I think that each individual listening to this needs to say you have to stop thinking that the government's there to make your life better. Governments don't make your life better. Governments can make your life worse. Governments can sometimes be a good fail-safe to stop really bad things from happening. So like, in the UK, we have emergency health cover and healthcare that is paid for by government. It's not great, but it certainly saves a lot of people from going bankrupt due to health issues like you guys have in this country. So the government can do things that make bad situations less bad, but they're not there to make your life better. They can be a safety net, but like they're not here to make your life better. You need to do what you can to make your own life better. You need to stop wanting the system to reward average and just say, I have to become extraordinary. I've got to become better. I know not everyone can do that, but unfortunately that is the world we're in right now. You got to be part of a team that's going places.
So how do you think a recession would impact entrepreneurs?
For those who are playing by the Industrial Revolution rules, it's going to be devastating. And for those who are playing by the digital rules, it's going to be just fine. So, like, for example, one thing that doesn't have tariffs on it is services. And the clue is in the name, software as a service. So SaaS businesses from overseas can trade in here, and USA SaaS businesses can trade across borders as well. So software as a service is like one of these things that just easily done. And everyone's looking to get more software to run more efficiently. So, your type of business, podcasts, in times of disruption, people listen to more podcasts. They want more coaching and consulting. The other thing too is that your business, there's really no reason why you couldn't create a product for people living in Dubai and people who are living in Switzerland and people who are living all over the world. You could, the funny thing is that when I ask people, how much do you want to earn for the year? And most people say something like 500,000 to 5 million. I go, okay, let's break that down into how many customers you need, paying how much. And it never turns out to be a big number. Like a lot of people, it's like, oh, I need 1,500 customers who pay $50 a month or something like that. So like that's not going to be hard. If you build the right product, you can have 1,500 customers who pay $50 a month. There's 1.8 billion English speakers online. There's 70% of the world's population has fast internet. Every single country in the world now has an affluent base. There's someone there. They're like, go to Vietnam now. There are very affluent areas of Vietnam. There are very affluent area like, you know, Singapore, Hong Kong, Bali. Like there are rich people everywhere now. So if you essentially said, oh, like my whole mission is really just to figure out how much I want to earn, create a product, launch the product, make sure that it can be available for anyone anywhere in the world. It solves a problem. Doesn't matter where you are, you can buy the product. Like can I run through a few of my products I've launched? So I launched Score App, which is it's a software that creates software quizzes and assessments and waiting lists. So it's a software product, online diagnostics, online surveys, online quizzes, and waiting lists and mini courses. So it's a really cool little piece of technology. We've got at the moment over 8,000 paying customers, 120,000 free accounts, and they're in 150 countries. Super successful business, getting up there to be worth close to $100 million as a business. Like we launched that 5 years ago from scratch with no VC. Then I've got bookmagic.ai. So that's an AI wrapper that helps people to write their book. So it uses our intellectual property as to how to write a book and publish a book, combines it with ChatGPT, and creates essentially like a coaching program for you to get your ideas out and helps you with analogies and research and all that sort of stuff. It's still you writing, but it's supporting that process. So we launched that a year ago. It's currently growing 8% month-on-month compounding. So it's like just going like that at the moment. So bookmagic.ai. We're about to launch Awards App, which is an AI that supports you to win awards. So if you've got a business and you want to win some awards, it tells you every award ceremony in the world that is relevant for your business, what the categories are. It shows you examples of who won it in the past and how they're, what their application would have looked like. It then helps you using AI to answer the key questions that the judges are looking for. So we're about to launch that one. So yeah, ultimately, like, I'm finding it incredibly easy to just spin out little products and services that scale globally. Very rapidly, they start making 20, 30, 40 grand a month. The bigger ones more like 700, 800 grand a month. Like the world we're living in, AI is disrupting everything. It's cheaper and easier than ever to create software. A team of 10 people with AI built in take over. You got the opportunity to disrupt old industries, like so much opportunity. But you just got to move towards that opportunity.
Now, what about actually applying that, though, and using that towards practical things in your life, like owning a home, which right now is out of reach for a lot of people? How do you think that impacts everything? And do you think there is a solution to just housing prices going through the roof? Is it even worth it to buy a home anymore?
Well, that's a really great question. There's an emotional thing about wanting to own a home. But with all the taxes and the prices of homes, especially the closing costs and buying and selling costs, you got to ask yourself the question, is it worth me wanting to own a home? And you may even ask that question, like, do I even want to like be so wedded to a particular location? Because if one of your ancestors from 100 years ago came in a time machine to today, and they looked at our lives and they said, wow, these cameras, this equipment, these microphones, what the heck is YouTube? What the heck is Instagram? What's TikTok all about? And they're looking at all this amazing stuff. The thing that they would be completely uninspired by is houses and how much you get for your money. They'd be like, like they're the same houses we lived in. These are boring houses. You guys haven't really done much with houses. This is like, most of these houses look the same as our houses. They're not floating or doing anything, and they're super expensive. And then they might ask the question, why would you want to be pinned down to one location? Because if a government gets a little grabby, don't you just want to hand back the keys and go somewhere else? So, like, for sure, like, do that. Once again, I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying here's how to play the cards that you're dealt. The way to play the cards that you're dealt is that you do a couple of things. You build businesses that become wildly profitable first. So you build profitable business or you get part of a business team. And if you're going to get into real estate, you get properties that you can rent out to people and you can become a landlord first. And then there comes a moment where you can either close out those properties and then buy yourself a family home, or you can close out one of the businesses and buy a family home. The majority of people who can actually buy a family home right now, they either A, start with being a landlord first, even though they're renting their own house, or B, they're running a successful business. And then through closing those things out, they can then buy a big family home, and a lot of people pay cash, so like you can sell your company for quite a lot of money and then buy the big house if you want to from there. But with that said, and I know I'm going to get so much hate in the comments, like I'm aware that this really triggers people because it's an emotional thing about owning your home. I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying these are the cards that we're dealt. So the upside of this is that it's never been cheaper to rent amazing houses. And you enjoy living there. And if things change, you just say, here's the keys, I'm going to go live in Costa Rica. Or here's the keys, I'm going to go a different state.
That's what I think right now. A lot of people reach out to me and they say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this house. And I really do my best to try to talk them out of it. Like, I think that could backfire if in 30 years from now that home is worth 10x.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man. But in the short term, over the next few years, it's so much cheaper to rent. Like, I'm looking at the cost of buying, and the house might be like $6,000 a month.
And the taxes.
But I'm like, yeah. Or you could rent the exact same house down the street for $3,000 a month and just save the difference.
The other thing too is our lives change in really big ways. So like our grandparents' lives didn't change massively across 40 years. But if you go to today, you're probably in your early 20s going to want share accommodation with friends where you all live together in a cool place together. Then you might form a relationship and you want to have like a cool, trendy flat that you live with in a cool area, and it's like a 2-bedroom flat with you and your girlfriend or whatever. Then you might break up and go back to share accommodation. Then you could get another flat again with another fiance this time, and then you live in this really cool inner city location. Then you have your first child, so you want to live a little bit out and have a 3-bedroom house, and then you might have another child and you say, okay, now I want a 4-bedroom house. And then you might have another child and you want a 5-bedroom house, let's say. And then maybe you get an amazing job opportunity or a business opportunity interstate. So you go, hey, you know what? Time to go to Austin, Texas, because that's where the opportunity is. So our lives are very different to our grandparents' lives. So one of the best things you may benefit from is just having the flexibility where you're not just hanging on to this house all the time. Now, with that said, you can then, if you want to own property, if you want to be in the real estate game, it's very easy to buy properties that you don't live in because the reason they give you the loan is based on the rent. So when you buy a house you're going to live in, they want the deposit and they want to know how much you earn from a job. When you buy a house that you're going to rent out, they want the deposit and they want to know what the average rental value is of that property. So because the house is generating its own mechanism for paying the bills, you're buying a house that comes with an income stream. So, it's kind of easier to say, oh, okay, I'll buy a 1-bedroom inner city apartment that it needs fixing up. I'll fix it up, and now I'm going to rent that out. You know?
The problem though these days is that it's so expensive to buy that you're renting at a loss, and you're competing against the other person who bought their home at a 3% mortgage and has a really low tax basis and really low overhead. So they could charge just above that just to break even because they just want something easy, versus the person who buys today is going to have a payment that's 50% higher and they have to charge higher, but they can't compete with people with 3% mortgages.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks.
So-
It kind of sucks. Look, you're also up against people like myself who I just park money in real estate in terms of like, I have no expectation of it providing a return. It's just a good place to stay above inflation.
Why not do treasuries, or why not park it
Do
in
all of that.
Bitcoin or something?
Yeah, you can do all of those things. So like you can have some treasuries and you can have some like if you end up in a place where you get a liquidity event, like you sell a company, you're probably going to have S&P 500. You might have some treasuries if you're older and you need the security. You might have some houses for emotional reasons. So a lot of people I know, they want to have a house or a couple of houses as like fallback positions. If the worst should happen, or for their kids. Maybe they have 3 kids. They say, oh, I'm going to have 3 kids. So if I die, each child will get an apartment to live in, or something like that. So, once you hit that category, you have a diversified portfolio.
What are your thoughts on the U.S. economy? Do you think that it's possible that the U.S. dollar could lose its dominance?
Well, let's start with the strengths of the US. There's some fundamental strengths that are hard to negotiate. The US has the most amazing geography. If you're China, you have 14 land borders with other countries. So if you go and go this way, it's the Philippines. Up here, it's Japan. Here, it's Korea. Over here, it's Vietnam. Over here, it's Russia. It's Mongolia. So India, right? Tibet, right? So you've got all of these countries and you've got historical grievances with 14 different countries, and all of them are shit scared of you and have militarized borders, all this sort of stuff. So China, for all of their strengths, cannot get out of that little ring fence because they've got 14 land borders. The USA has got massive ocean on the left, massive ocean on the right, friendly neighbor up north, manageable situation, one border that's manageable, and that's it. That's the USA. You also have energy security and food security. So if all things go to custard, you can make enough food and enough energy to run your country independently without importing a thing. Now, if you go to China, 40% of their calories are imported, most of their energy is imported, and all of the energy imports have to come by boat through an island chain. And at any point around India, Malaysia, Indonesia, at any of those points, if you were to somehow stop those boats, that's it, lights go off. So geography is one of the things that the USA just has hugely it's impossible to overstate how much of an advantage that is. That is the ultimate advantage on any other country.
Do you have any predictions for the U.S. economy? You think that, like I said, that it could ever lose its dominance with the U.S. dollar?
I'm a really big believer that you should focus on what you can control and ignore big things like this for most people. So when you focus on the economy, your brain can only adopt so many projects at any given time. One of the easiest ways to totally derail your own personal success is to worry about things that are above your pay grade. So you need to play the cards that you're dealt. If you are sitting there worrying about the economy, it sets up a dynamic of worrying about something that you have no strings to pull. You have nothing to do with the economy. It's this massive boogeyman, this huge, complex system. There are really good arguments for the economy going like this. There are really good arguments for the economy going like this. And what you have to do is say, all of that is irrelevant. It's my job to create my own personal freedom. It's my job to create my own success. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? Where is the best place for me to be? And block out the news, block out Twitter, block out all of that stuff. Spend time developing your own strategy. Right? Because in any economy, there are successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses. Even if the economy were to completely tank, there will still be a restaurant that has a lineup out the front and that restaurant's making profit. There will be a business coach who's got 12 business coaching clients and they're making $1 million a year because they've got 12 clients who pay $100,000 a year. There will be a lawn care business that is the best lawn care business and it's making $400,000 a year. There will be someone who goes and buys up all these businesses out of bankruptcy and they will say, oh my goodness, the economy collapsing was the biggest thing that in my life. This changed my whole family's life. We're generationally wealthy because of that thing that happened.
What are the main things that distract you right now and how do you eliminate those?
So the human brain, it's fun to think about the brain. I don't know if this is true or not, but it's fun to think about the brain in 3 levels. There's reptile mode, there's autopilot mode, and there's visionary mode. So reptile mode is fight, flight, freeze, freak out, right? So it's the worst of you. Throw tantrums, raise your voice, get angry. It's that base level emotion. And you know what it's like to be reptile. Think back to the last time you had a reptile moment. Would you say
Graham
Jack
has them
all the
anytime
time.
someone cuts in front of him?
Okay.
I don't really care about that so much.
His reptile moment is like getting cut off, right?
Yeah.
So in that moment, do you think you gain IQ or lose IQ points, right? Of course you lose IQ points.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, and you say stuff that you have to apologize for later, and it's not your best self. So reptile mode is a very real thing, and it shortcuts every other part of the brain, and you have a 10-minute reptile mode moment. Autopilot is repeat the past. There's a big part of the brain that just says, if I walked down this path yesterday and there were bananas, then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and walk down that path and get the bananas again, and I'm just going to keep doing it. And eventually I don't even know why I'm walking down that path. I just walk down that path every day, right? So this is the autopilot mode, where you're not really thinking, you're just allowing momentum to capture you. Then there's visionary mode, and visionary mode is where you get a big picture. It's often in the shower or the bath. It's often when you're driving. It's often when you're traveling, when you're on a plane, when you're on holiday, and you start to think, why don't I call that person and see if we could do a deal together? Or, hey, wait a second, so-and-so talked about sponsoring something. We could get a sponsorship deal going. Or, hey, I know someone who's amazingly talented. They could join the team. Why haven't I asked them to join the team yet? Right? So you have those kind of big picture, connect the dot moments. So all success comes from being in visionary mode. And what you have to do is, the first thing to become way more successful is to recognize, am I in reptile, autopilot, or visionary mode? Where do I spend my time? So throughout a given week, most people spend most of their time in autopilot and reptile and very little time in visionary. So the reason I say tune out from macro is because all things that you can't control force you into reptile mode. You cannot think, because they're outside of your control, all they can do is make you fearful. And fear is the thing that robs you of IQ. So what you want to do, here's a couple of ways to get into visionary mode. Go somewhere new that's really high up, and you can look at the whole city, and you can actually observe the whole city. So go to a physically high place, and just sit and journal from a high place. Turn off the phone. Stop watching the news. Stop, log out of X, log out of the social media, actually log out of it, and see if you can just give yourself some time. Go for a daily walk, but without headphones in. Not listening to anything. Take a notepad and a pen. Even if you can, just leave your phone behind and just allow yourself that time to just think and just dream a little bit. Give your brain a challenge before you go to bed at night. So have a notepad by the side of your bed and write down a question that you want to have the answer to, and just say, while I'm sleeping, I want to be thinking about this in the background. And it's incredible. The following morning, you get an answer to these things. So, and also be around people who are at the next level. So if you can, if you've got a career that you're unhappy with, and you start spending time around people who've got a career they're happy with, that's going to put you into possibility mode. If you are doing $1 million and you hang out with someone who's doing 10 million of revenue, that's going to put you into the mode of possibility. So you want to do whatever you can to be in visionary mode.
What's a business you dislike, even though it's wildly profitable?
I'm not a fan, for me personally, of anything that is fast-moving consumer good that creates a lot of plastic or waste, or something that is just it's bad for the environment. I hate volume-based businesses. My personal thing is, I don't like volume businesses for me personally to run. Any business that requires tens of thousands of sales every week in order to stay in business, not my favorite. I also I really want, there's only a narrow set of things that I do like. I like recurring revenue. I like digital assets. I like build it once, scale it, get it right once, and then, onboard more people. I like things that can be run with teams of 30 people, and we can punch well above our weight with a team of 30. These are the types of things that I really enjoy.
What about side hustles? Are they ever worth it?
Sure, but when you say worth it, they're worth it to get that self-awareness. They're worth it to get commercial skills. And do it from a place of fun. If it feels like an obligation, probably not. But it's kind of fun to do some side hustles. So me and my kids, we we build a lemonade stand out the front of the house and sell some lemonade, and it's kind of fun to.
What tricks do you do when you're selling lemonade like that?
Oh, you don't need tricks with 7-year-olds. They just dance around and say lemonade, get your lemonade, and everyone comes in.
So why don't you have kids in front of every business, just repping the business, try to get customers?
That might be illegal.
Well, because we're doing it not to make money, we're doing it to learn. But look, side hustles are great. What are you thinking of when you think of side hustles?
I think of people doing something that's usually wildly unprofitable that they spend hours and hours and hours on for like $10.
Side hustles are great for learning. So the idea behind the phase 1 is working for a mentor. Phase 2 is doing some side hustles just to feel like what it's like to be
business owner, customer service,
doing
it, product.
Exactly. So it's just that building your confidence that you can do this. So if you know that the purpose of this side hustle is not to become a millionaire, it's to actually just lay some foundations of what it's like to be in business, and that it's especially open and shut 90 days, where it starts and finishes in 90 days, those are the best side hustles. And then you evaluate, what did I learn from this?
What are your best ways to come up with ideas in terms of creating a business, or how to spot trends for demand for certain things?
Okay, so a great business is going to come from 3 angles. So angle number 1 is something I'm passionate about. Angle number 2 is something that solves a problem. Angle number 3 is something that is people are paying for, like there's money involved. So it's either going to be passion, problem, or payment.
Just or.
Right? Well, great business opportunities are the 3 converging. So I'm passionate about this. It solves a problem, and the market has money to spend. They're going to pay. So what we're trying to do is we start with any one of those 3 things. And what we're trying to do is come up with a list of 10 business opportunities that we can then research. The goal is not to get stuck on one idea. It's to have 10 ideas and say which one's the best of these 10, and to essentially conduct fast and cheap experiments to see which one is going to be the best one. So what I would love to do is if I was like doing this with you, we'd come up with 10 ideas, and I'd give you a series of like ideas based on passion, payment, or problem. We'd come up with our 10 ideas. Then we'd pick 3 to test. And what we'd do is we'd launch a landing page, and we'd set up a landing page that says, we're going to be launching a new business that does X, Y, and Z. It's for this type of person. It solves these types of problems. We'd have some images on the page, and we'd say, join the waiting list, and you will get exclusive access into a WhatsApp group for people in the same situation as you. You'll get some great content, and you'll get an initial discount off the product when it launches. You'll get a launch special offer. So join the waiting list. When you join the waiting list, we're going to have a button that says join waiting list, and then it's going to ask 5 questions. Which best describes your current situation? Which best describes your outcome that you're looking to achieve? What is the top thing that has prevented you from getting this outcome in the past? How much do you want us? How much are you prepared to spend? And what else do you want us to know? So those are the big 5 questions that you would ask. Then they join the waiting list, and we begin warming that group up. Now, my first thing that I want to do for launching any business is I have a minimum threshold of, can I get 150 people to join that waiting list? And how hard was it to get 150? Now, if I've got 3 opportunities that I'm testing, it's going to be the case that one gets 50 people, one gets 100 people, and one gets 200 people. And it's like, okay, this one with the same amount of effort is 4 times more people are interested. So the data can then support which opportunity to go for.
Yeah, unknowingly, I did something similar to this that I was telling you about. But I wanted to create this entrepreneur meetup, and I posted on Instagram to see hey, any established business owners interested in doing something like this a few times a year. And I just posted that with a Google Sheets so I could get some data on who's applying, because I had no idea. And we ended up getting over 2,000 people applying. And so we started at the top of the list with people who self-reported and we loosely verified that were earning more than $10 million a year in revenue, or had a business that you could see very clearly this is doing well. And we just talked to them.
Yeah,
we just called them.
Yeah.
And we did an hour call with basically each person, vetted them, and we found 15 people who are the best of the best at what they do throughout various fields of real estate, cryptocurrency, various finance industries, SaaS businesses. A few had physical products. And it was incredible to put these people together in a room and to see how they interact and what excites them, and just talk to them on a deeper level.
And you charge money for that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like, out of those 35, are you happy to say how much revenue you did off the back of that?
It's in the six figures of revenue. Now, in fairness, we are reinvesting a substantial
Back
amount
into
of
the
that
group.
back into
Of
the
course.
group.
Yeah.
So I'm not really
But
looking
there's
at this
also
from a profit
But
perspective.
there's nothing wrong with profit,
But
right?
selfishly, I do get to meet people that ordinarily I wouldn't be able to meet, I do these events.
You get paid to have your network. So there's
100%. Yeah.
There's a couple of things I love about that story. Thing number one is that you just launched the waiting list, or what you called an expression of interest list.
I just want proof of
so
just
expression of
intention.
interest. So you didn't like organize anything, you didn't spend anything, you didn't put deposits down for anything, you didn't spend any money. It's just you went to Instagram or you went to LinkedIn and you said, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Give me an expression of interest if you'd be up for this." You got more than 150 people who said, "Yes, I'm interested in that." So well over that, obviously 2,000. So it's a great result. So the first test I call a 150 test. 150 test is, can I get more than 150 on a list? The second test I like to do is called a 30 test, which is talk to 30 and find out what 30 have to say.
Yeah.
So without even knowing this,
That's funny.
so my method is 150 test, 30 test, 150 on a list, talk to 30 and find out specifically what they're looking for.
That's interesting you said the 30. We talked to 30 people and we picked, of the 30, there was like 15 that we could tell were a good fit. The other 15 weren't quite
Not so
as
much?
not the match that we're going for.
But what you also know is that roughly half the people who meet a certain criteria are ready to go ahead. So that also tells you got another 200 people on the list who meet that criteria. So there's another 100 sales. You just pick up the phone and talk to the next 200. And
If you guys are interested, there is a link in the description where you could apply.
Fantastic. There you go. Like, isn't it funny? It's like, it's that easy. You know,
It was also interesting speaking with a lot of these people because above $10 million a year, it seemed like they had a lot different problems that they wanted solved than the person in the 100K to $1 million price point.
Of course. There's six-figure problems. So, like, to break it down, the first six figures comes down to four problems called chaos: concept, audience, offer, sales. Then the six-figure to seven-figure journey is about establishing a key person of influence to be the front person of the business, and they have to pitch, publish products, profile, and partnership. So that's the key person of influence problem.
Mm-hmm.
After that, we've got the challenge of aligning teams and developing teams, putting in a tech stack, developing assets, right? So there's all of this kind of scalability, building out a product ecosystem, building a team and a culture and a brand. So now this is where business gets a bit tricky. So four things: chaos, next key person of influence, then the more grown-up problems after you hit 10 million.
Yeah.
So you've just broken it down and you've figured that out like effortlessly. A lot of people are going to be cross and they're going to say, "Oh, easy for you because you've got this whopping big brand. I don't have a brand." What you must do if you don't have a brand is you need to start building a brand, but also partnering with someone who already has a brand. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's got 1 million followers, but if you partnered with someone who's got 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, you could replicate a version of that. So the problem with being someone who has tens of thousands of followers is that your time is spread so thin. You're looking for people to come and join your team and partner with you. So, like, if someone, I'm not saying you because you get approached all the time. Someone who's like, imagine you with 100,000 followers. Someone comes to you and says, "Hey, look, I'm prepared to do this whole mastermind thing. I've got a way of structuring it. I've researched it. Here's how we do it. All that's required of you is to do a LinkedIn post. And from that LinkedIn post, I'll take over and I'll do all the sales calls. I'll put everything in place."
Well, it's funny because that's exactly how the idea of this entire group, it's called the Index, came to be. Someone paid for a consulting call, and I almost never do consulting calls, but if someone reaches out with just a good enough, just like, "Hey, I want to pick your brain on this topic," and they check out, I'll do them. And this guy was different. His name is Justin. He reached out without any questions. He just said, "I just wanted to chat and just talk." I was like, "Okay, really? For 45 minutes? Yeah, sure." And he was asking me questions about, like, what would you do if you had the opportunity? Where do you think your enjoyment is? Just random questions. And he asked me, if you could do any business right now, what would you want to do? And I told him this kind of like meetup networking idea. And he took it to heart and then came back a week later with the whole thing done. It's like, "Hey, we came up with a name. Here's how we could do it. I have like this figured out.
Super
All
impressive.
you need to do now is just if you want to test the proof of concept, just post on Instagram. And I was like, yeah, I'll just see, because maybe there's not enough interest in this, and then we could just shut it down right then and there. But it was just from that.
So there you go.
From one consulting.
Yeah. So people might be listening to you and say, well, I can't do what you do, but you can definitely do what Justin did. That, awesome. Entrepreneurship's it's fun. It's so much fun. Yeah. It's good.
Even this podcast, by the way, was Jack's idea. So, Jack came to me in beginning of 2020 with this idea that, Graham, you should start a podcast because this is a great way for you to connect with your audience. I had no intention of starting a podcast. And Jack said, all you need to do is show up and give me an hour of your time once a week, and I'll take care of everything else.
I did the same
turned into this.
With bookmagic.ai. That was a team who came to me and approached me with that. Awards app was Donna, who came to me and approached me with that. Score app was my business partner, Steve, who basically started brainstorming it with me. So, all of these amazing opportunities, people come, the other thing you can do as well is if you want to approach someone very high profile, you can approach them as a team. So if you put together 3 or 4 people who are an amazing, ready to go team, but you're missing that key person of influence who can be the face of it, if you show up with cavalry, if you say, hey, look, so-and-so's got great sales background, so-and-so's got great finance background, so-and-so's got great ops background, the 3 of us are going to build this business with you as the face of it, you're going to earn a ton of money just by being the face of it. By the way, that was my very first business that I launched at 21. That's how I did it. I paid 5% of revenue to a guy who was the face of my business. And myself and 3 people, we built that into, we did 1.3 million in the first year, and 5% of that went to the guy who was the face of the business because he was well known in the industry. And we paid him, I think we paid $5,000 speaking fee once a month. And that, that was obviously about 60 grand. And then we paid another 65 grand for 5% of 1.3 million. So he earned 125,000 in year 1, but we got 1.3 million. And I remember having about 400,000 worth of profit off the back of that after year 1. But all of that was because I'd done a deal with someone who was the face of the business.
So where do you go to get your advice from?
I've got some amazing mentors. My mentors now are people who typically have sold businesses for 200 million or more, because that's kind of my next mindset. That's my next milestone. Some big exits. So I'm, I've got mentors who have been in private equity. I've got mentors who have sold tech companies strategic exits. I've got some amazing wealth managers who come from the world of wealth management. So I just kind of crowdsource a group of people who I, regularly meet up with. But I'm a big believer that people are smarter than me. Let's business is a team sport. You want to treat it like a team sport. You don't want to try and do everything on your own.
What do you think about work-life balance versus hustle culture? There's a large population that say you have to work 24/7 if you want to be successful, and a lot of people detest that. Did you have to put in those hours when you were first getting started, and do you think that's a sacrifice that needs to be made in order to be exceptional in business?
I'm curious. You're 26. You've spoken to a lot of successful people. What's your initial take on this?
My initial take is that you do need a couple years, realistically, where you're working some outsized hours and making some pretty hard sacrifices. But it also depends on the industry you're in and also your aptitude. If you're someone that is just super intelligent and you can leverage things better, then maybe it will require less sacrifice. But you usually need to know, basically top down how your business is going to work, have your hands dipped in every single operational thing. And that all takes just a lot of time for anyone.
That's a great answer. That was true for me. I almost feel like when you're getting something big going, imagine this big concrete wheel. And in the early days, it's so much energy and effort to just get it to move. And it takes 12, 14 hours a day to just get that thing to move a few inches. But once it starts to spin, you can just tap it and it will keep spinning. So for me, my early days, because I started in my 20s, 21 was my first company. I rolled out of bed in the morning, and I worked, I had breakfast, I worked, I had lunch, I worked, I had dinner, I worked, and then I went to bed. And I did that for maybe 10, 12 years. Where I am today is total ridiculous work-life balance. As in I just have fun all the time. And I've got 7 different companies and they're all successful and they're doing really well and they're profitable. I can start new things. And because I put that energy to get the flywheel going in the beginning, I can now just go tap, 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 tap. that goes. Someone says, oh, we need to solve this problem. Oh, okay, I know someone who can solve that problem. So I built a network, I built up some skills, I built some momentum. And now once that flywheel's spinning, it would actually take a lot of effort to slow it down.
So if you were starting over today and you want to make $1 million, how would you do it?
Well, you got to remember that trying to make $1 million from the existing economy is incredibly hard because the whole economy is not built for that. The way to make $1 million is to bring something into the economy to create something, to be creative force, to do something, to be the organizing force for something new that didn't exist. The two things that I would do is I would work really hard to get the data to validate a good idea. And then I would go to investors and I would say, we're going to launch this idea and it's going to be initial seed investment. We're going to raise $500,000 at a 2.5 million valuation. And I would show them the financial forecast. I'd show them the initial data, the waiting lists, the data that we've collected and all of that sort of stuff. I might go and pitch to 10 investors who each put in 50 grand, or 20 investors who put in 25 grand, or 50 investors who each put in 10. But I'm going to try and raise that $500,000 at a maybe $2.5 million valuation. And as soon as that round is done, I'm a millionaire, aren't I? Right? So I'm now worth $1 million on paper. So provided I can go in with that, now what I can do with that $500,000 is I can hire a couple of really good people. We can execute on the plan. We can grow the thing forward. Next thing we can do is raise 1.5 million at a 10 million valuation. I can take a little bit off the table, perhaps.
There are a lot of people out there that don't have those connections. They're not in those circles.
Can I be brutal? You've got to stop thinking about the worst case scenarios. Like everyone, like if you're always thinking about, but what about the person who's got they don't have shoes and they live in a puddle and they eat worms. It's like you can always make the case that there's someone who just can't do it. Okay, fine, they can't do it, right? The people who are listening to this podcast, they're going to be sick of, they're going to sit there and say, but I'm not in a puddle. I don't eat worms. I can do this. Like your people, your listeners are people who are ambitious. They're pumped. They're ready for it. They're up for it. They're smart. If they're listening to this podcast, they're smart people. We don't necessarily have to take care of everyone. Everyone's got to run their own race. Unfortunately, some people are just not going to make it. I hate to say it, that's just the truth. So it's not my problem to fix every single person's thing. Here's what, for me personally, I talk to people who want to be entrepreneurs. I talk to people who are entrepreneurs. I talk to people who are already trying stuff. They're reading books. They're listening to podcasts. I wouldn't be talking to someone in Chicago who lives in a puddle and eats worms and has no shoes. That's not my guy. That's not my person. I talk to people, I'm on this podcast because you attract listeners who 8% of them have more than 10 million, right? So if you constantly doing this, and the reason I'm being a pain in the ass about this is I see this all the time and it's oh, but what about this person? What about that person? I don't know, right? I can't solve for every single person. Here's what I do know. If you get a critical mass of successful entrepreneurs, they're going to lift the whole economy up. All right. So let's say that person is going to be better off because an entrepreneur who's in their city is growing, and that entrepreneur hires a team, and that team eat at a cafe, and that cafe needs a worker, right? And suddenly the economy's moving. The economy's stuff's happening. I talk to the engine room of the economy. The engine room of the economy creates second order and third order consequences that lifts everybody else up. Am I saying that everybody can be in the engine room? No, not everyone can be in the engine room. Everyone can benefit from the engine room firing on all cylinders. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm curious though.
Am I going to get hate?
No, the reason why I ask questions like this is not necessarily because I agree or I disagree with kind of what I'm inferring by the question. It's just because I feel like a lot of people that are watching are probably wondering that. And so to those that may have an adverse reaction to what you just said, do you have anything to say to them, or do you think that it's kind of just it is what it is?
Congratulations for listening to the podcast. That's what I'd say. You're on a path. Get a job. Right? You're not going to be an A player from day one. You're not going to be a black belt. You don't walk into a martial arts school and become a black belt on day one. You go and learn from black belts. In fact, you don't even learn from black belts. The black belt teaches the advanced class. The green belt teaches the white belt class. So if you know that you're starting out from scratch, it's just unrealistic that you're just going to be able to come in and say, oh, I listened to one podcast with Daniel and now I want to be a millionaire. No, you're going to get a job first and you're going to work for a small dynamic team. My advice for anyone who's in that situation is work for a company that has less than 10 people, because then you're going to learn what goes on. I learned so much working at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's for a few years, and as a 15-year-old, I'm running a $2 million a year restaurant. And like the store manager was 22 years old, and like a bunch of 15, 16-year-olds, we're just like cranking out, 40,000, or it must have been more than 2 million, but we're cranking out like thousands of dollars in lunchtime rushes, and we're making food and selling food and doing all this. We're following systems and procedures, and we're seeing how money gets shared. Like, I was there to learn. I went to McDonald's to learn how McDonald's runs, and I did 3 years just learning everything I could about McDonald's. I can still tell you all sorts of things about it. 54 nuggets in a bag. I can tell you how hot the toasters are. This is from 25 years ago. The training was that good.
Why does it seem like I don't see like 16-year-olds working at McDonald's anymore? Like, everyone that I see is like 30, 40 years old.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know here. I haven't been in a McDonald's for a long time. I know that Starbucks spends more money training their staff than on their coffee. So like, go work at a Starbucks, but even better, go work for an entrepreneur. Go work in a small business that has less than 10 people, so you can learn the ropes. We can spend a lot of time talking about how hard it is at the bottom. The thing that raises the bottom is the engine room. We need an engine room. So if you're ready to be part of the engine room, that's going to lift everyone up anyway. Also, I hate to be an absolute arse about this. I have a really good friend who's a quadruple amputee, and he lost both arms and both legs on one day, and woke up at age 19 as a quadruple amputee, being a super healthy, fit, amazing, like 19-year-old, and then the next day he's got no arms and legs. And he has gone on to get married to a beautiful woman, have kids. He started a rehabilitation clinic for amputees. He's one of the best in the world. People fly from all over the world to go to his clinics. It's more than 7 figures of revenue. He's a best-selling author. He's an international public speaker. He is a absolute killer. And every excuse that you can come up with, like, he just didn't accept it. He's just like, okay. And he's not from a wealthy family. Like, he's not from some family that just said, oh, we're going to pay for everything. He just was sitting there. He was sitting there on the couch watching endless television shows about a few weeks after he got home from hospital. And he said, this is not going to be a good life. Like, I have to make a decision. Like, he realized no one's actually going to come and save me. No one's going to come and figure this out for me. If I don't do this, this is on me. And he had this vision where he said, it's either the worst thing that's ever happened to me or the best thing that has ever happened to me. And he's cheeky because he says, I would have been working in a corporate accounting firm like my brothers. His brothers work in like the big corporate accounting firms. He's like, now I live the best life ever. He's like, if I had to choose to get my limbs back, but then go and work in that accounting firm, he's like, I think I would keep the amputee.
Would you say you're happier having more money?
Yeah. Yes.
At what point would you say the money kind of has a diminishing return on your happiness?
I don't know. Somewhere like, these are kind of cheeky questions, but because this will get a lot of hate. I don't know. Like, when you start earning 50,000 to 100,000 a month, most things are pretty good in terms of, like, you can do almost, like, the economy is not built for people who. The economy is built for people who earn 75 grand a year. So everything's priced for 75 grand a year. So everything is essentially made to be affordable for people who are on normal wages, provided you don't go into super luxury environments that are built for the super rich. In the normal world, if you're earning, $500,000 to $1 million a year, like, the world's pretty much your oyster. You can, do all those sorts of things. I don't know. I haven't hit that point. More money's great. I don't understand all these people who are like, boo-hoo, I made money, but it didn't make me happy. It's like, rubbish. It did not make you happy, right? You removed all the things that made you unhappy, for starters. You might still be left with some things that money can't solve. Money can only solve money problems. But most problems can actually dramatically improved. One thing I will tell you about it, I was super happy when I was broke. So I moved out of home. I was living on a concrete, like I took a garage floor, put a carpet on it, put a mattress on top of that. So I was 18 years of 1 week, and I was so broke that I would go to the vegetable and butcher shop and ask for the offcut boxes and like, what can you give me for a couple of dollars? And I'd make that
Sound like Graham last Tuesday.
I know.
make that into a soup.
Yep.
And like my hobby was walking in nice neighborhoods because like that's all I could afford, just walking. But at one time I was pizza delivery driver, barman, door-to-door salesperson, running my own nightclub parties, trying to do university, like crazy stuff, and doing everything I knew how to do. I was making barely enough money just survive, and I could only really survive on things like canned tuna and pasta. And I learned how to make this canned tuna pasta dish with some like tomato sauce in it, like horrible stuff, right? But I figured out how to make really cheap food, and I got a parking ticket, and I had to eat just nonstop Special K breakfast cereal for like a week so that I could afford the parking ticket. So I've been there. But the thing I will tell you about myself is I was super excited because I'm like, this is just part of the journey. I'm gonna be like flying one day. I'm gonna remember what it was like to start at the total bottom.
So you always knew you were going to be rich.
I was optimistic. Yeah, I was super optimistic.
You had the confidence.
Yeah, I'm also I'm quite a happy person.
See, that's the thing. I mean, I was trying to isolate the one thing that I feel like differentiates a lot of the people that are successful versus are not successful. And it seems like you're coming from the perspective that it's knowledge, like they need to go in and get the experience, be with the right circles. I have a feeling that it kind of starts a little bit before that in terms of faith. Like you had the confidence and faith that if you did the right things, that the universe would reward you. But I think a lot of people, like they have good aptitude. They're intelligent people, but they just don't have the confidence that if they do the right things, the good things will happen.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I'm probably super lucky that I got as I say, luck is a big part of it, but it was interesting. It's like a dance with luck. You do some stuff and then you get lucky, and you do some stuff and you get lucky. So for me, I took this huge risk to put on my first nightclub party when I was 18. And I rented the top nightclub in town. And then I approached McDonald's to be the sponsor, and I approached the radio station to be the sponsor. And they said yes, but I had committed to this venue. And then I run this nightclub party, and I think I made, I don't know, $5,000-$6,000 in a night. And like it was all cash, and it was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like this was amazing, huge. And then I ran 6 of those that year. But then because I had done those nightclub parties, John took me on as his apprentice. So when I sat down with John for that first conversation, my mentor, he only took me on because he'd seen me hustling and creating the nightclub parties. So that luck came from this hustle. So bit of hustle, bit of luck, bit of hustle, bit of luck. Yeah, I think you got to keep in my mind, there's no choice. You just have to stay positive. You have to have your eye on the prize. The alternative is being miserable, and it repels people.
Is there anything that you've spent money on that's not worth it?
Normally cars and sports cars and things like that are not it's shocking how physical things become extremely, they lose their shine so quickly. Like I remember, you buy a really nice car. And mind you, there are nice cars and then there are really nice cars. You buy a nice car and it becomes a daily driver really fast. It becomes like the most normal thing. The value relative to the enjoyment drops off a cliff within about 3 to 6 months on those sorts of things. Experiences are always the best. Taking family on holidays, going to nice restaurants, putting together a group of having my wife puts on this amazing Christmas party every year, and we invite all of our friends from the year and bring people around to the house, and she has a jazz band and a magician and those kind of things. And those experiences, that stuff is just such a positive. So I think experiences tend to be really great. Having a fitness trainer is definitely a win. The negative stuff is all the status orientated stuff. The status treadmill is such a loser's game. getting into the whole, like, I have to have Louis Vuitton everything, and then if I'm not seen in Louis Vuitton, then it's a disaster, or like just being on this treadmill of having to spend 6 times as much as what it should cost on everything. Like, I don't know, for me personally, I just haven't found that is, the juice is not worth the squeeze there. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say in terms of things not being worth the money, 100%, I think status symbols like that, if you're buying them for that symbol, then I don't think it's worth it. I think expensive clothing is really not worth it.
I think
And then
a nice watch is actually
it's
worth
funny
it.
enough, a lot of the watches have been gifts.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I wear them all the time.
And
I
the
wouldn't
watches
buy it,
hold
yeah.
their value and they last a long time.
Yes.
So actually, I would say that they're not they don't necessarily, the things that drop precipitously in value, like clothing, cars, those things tend to be.
Yeah.
Plus, a watch will get the right kind of attention, whereas like a Gucci,
It just depends on the watch,
bag.
too.
Yeah, it depends on
Yeah.
the watch.
Yeah.
Going into debt for stuff, really, like I know in the US there's a much bigger culture around just going to debt for stuff. I find personally, I just don't really like being on a debt treadmill for something. God, it better be worth it.
What's your advice to broke people?
I think environment dictates performance. That get around an environment where people are succeeding. You want to be around an environment where being disciplined around money and earning and success is the norm. When I was in my 20s, I got dragged along to Latin jive dance classes, and I felt so embarrassed. I thought, like, who goes to dance classes? And I just thought that's so like counter to my identity, and I just didn't think this was a good thing. But as soon as I was around this group of people who go dancing, suddenly dancing was the most normal thing in the world. And I ended up doing it for 3 years and becoming quite good. And I remember just this idea of environment dictates performance. When you get in the environment, it becomes normal to do different things that you didn't think you would do previously. So when you're in an environment where everyone around you is saving, investing, starting businesses, growing businesses, having conversations about trends and performance and teams and all of those kinds of things, it just immediately kind of just levels you up. So like do whatever you can to either virtually be in that environment, which means you have a content diet that supports growth, like listening to these podcasts and that sort of stuff, and then an actual physical environment where you hang out with people, and you can be the one to put that together. So you can reach out to some people and say, hey, I want to put together like a monthly catch up where we get together and just talk life, liberty and strategy and happiness and all of those kinds of things. Do you want to come along? Do you want to be part of it? So you can even create a little environment like that.
What is something you wish more people asked you?
I think a lot of people think, I know this one's very specific, a lot of people think that creating a software company is really difficult, and it's become a lot easier. And AI is going to have a profound impact on society. I mean, one of the things I love talking about at the moment is just like getting into what is the profound, what are the second, third order consequences of AI. I think AI, as soon as the tractor plowed the first field, we were in a different environment. As soon as AI generated the first text that made sense, we're in a very different world. I really genuinely believe we are now living in a post-AI world, and it's just, there are now going to be second and third order consequences. And like essentially, what are those second and third order consequences? That's a very big discussion, but like that's where my I spend a lot of time thinking about that.
What about Bitcoin? What are your thoughts?
I wrestle with Bitcoin. I totally love the idea of it and hate the idea of it. I hate that it doesn't have fundamentals. And also I understand the value of it not having fundamentals. Like when I buy Nike stock, I know that Nike is making shoes that people wear, and I kind of it makes me feel reassured that there's a fundamental reason why this company makes this amount of shoes and this amount of profit and this amount, so there feels like a very good reason to own that asset. Bitcoin is more buyers than sellers. Like it has its value because it's a brand, and I understand that in this new digital economy, being a brand has a value. Being an accepted brand does actually have a value, but as a student of history, there are times in the past where things seemed like such a really good idea until they weren't. Like, there have been crashes, things that were once considered, like, so for example, the East India Company went down, this Dutch tulip mania, and it's one of these things where it totally makes sense until suddenly the consensus on it flips, and then when that consensus flips, if there's nothing holding it up. So I hold Bitcoin and I have Bitcoin, but it's still something I'm not. If I'm perfectly honest, I still get spidey senses about it just because of what's the fundamental.
We're going to go on to some rapid fire questions. Are rich people greedier than normal people?
No, because most of the rich people I know, they're constantly thinking about how do they add value, add value, add value. The conversation is constantly, how do I add value? And it's a mindset of, what are the problems that need solving in the world? How do I solve those problems? If I ask someone, think of an amount of money let me do this for you. Let me see how you go with this activity. I want you to think of an amount of money that if I can give you that amount of money, right, you'll be happy, right? All of your needs will be met. But I don't want you to be greedy. So pick an amount of money that's not greedy, where all of your needs get met next year, 2026. Give me that amount.
So that would be my net worth if I hit this?
No, this will be your income next year. How much do you want?
All of my needs are met. I would say like 250 grand.
250 grand. Okay, great. So that's a really greedy number because all you've thought about is your own personal circle and your own personal circumstances. A less greedy number would be $1 billion, because if you said with $1 billion, I can buy a rainforest, I can help homeless people, I can help extended members of my family. So if you said that my personal needs, I have a need to make a big impact in the world. Like if you said my core driving need is to make impact, then 250 grand is not going to make impact. It's just going to look after your own little world. So the smaller the number, the more greedy. By definition, you're only thinking about yourself, right? Now,
that's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Now, someone who's got a family would definitely say a bigger number because they're thinking, well, my needs are to provide for my kids and my family. And someone who's got a close extended family might say, actually, I'm going to pick 1.5 million so I can help my parents and my sister. And then someone who's like community minded would say, I'm going to pick a bigger number so I can help my community. So it's greedy to want less and it's not greedy to want more.
And the main thing, like, because a lot of people have their needs met with less than 250 grand. The reason why I said that is because one need of mine is to like be incredibly ambitious. And if I'm not solving for that ambition,
you're still thinking about yourself.
Yeah, I know. That's
right?
That's 100%.
So
now, when you said like the other thing was like, I want to make sure I'm saving enough to be able to provide for a certain like quality of life for my future family. That was another consideration.
So future family. So it's still very close to home.
Yeah.
Imagine if your scope of influence that you felt a need for were like, there's this young guy called Boylan Slat. He's a young guy who is pulling plastic out of the oceans. He's ending plastic out of rivers and streams. He's building boats that harness all the plastic that goes down rivers, pulling it out and getting it out of the river system. He's going into the deep parts of the ocean, pulling all this plastic out. Now, if I ask him that question, how much do you need next year to get your needs met? He's going to say billions because I want to pull all the plastic out of the ocean. Do you see the difference? So it's greedy to think about your own personal needs, and it's not greedy to think about how can I make an impact in the world. The people who are the richest and the wealthiest that I know, they think way bigger. And their need, their core desire is big impact. So yeah, so rich people, I think, they're always talking about value add, solving big problems at scale, and they're thinking about their need is to solve a big problem at scale.
Does money change people? Can it make you turn into an a-hole?
It's an accelerant. If you're an asshole, if you're an a-hole, then it's going to amplify and accelerate that. It's going to give you more scope. It's leverage, right? It's the thing that gives you maximum leverage. So if you're a very generous person, you could become generous at scale. If you're an a-hole, you become a-hole at scale.
Best and worst investment you've ever made?
The best investment is when I met my wife and I said, let's travel together for the next 3 months. Let's travel around the world together. And that's where our paths could have gone different ways, but best investment was was making sure that relationship worked. Best investment, having kids, making the commitment to do that. Worst investments have always been based on this is a really good way to make money.
Like what would be the worst investment?
Oh, like I stuck, angel investments where like I'm not actually passionate about the team or anything, but they've done a really good pitch about how much money they're going to make. And I go, oh, that's exciting. I'm going to put 20 grand into that. And then of course it goes to zero pretty quickly. So anything that's just purely money motivated tends to be like those ones have been my worst. And anything that's like I love the people, I really want to see them succeed. Like the best investments are into relationships. So like I recently made an angel investment into this company, and it was basically I wasn't interested in this. I was just interested in the relationship. Like Chris Williamson, awesome guy. I want to see him succeed. Like
great drink too.
Yeah, but I didn't make the investment based on the deck. I made the investment based on Chris.
What is the worst financial advice you constantly hear?
The worst is around the idea that compounding alone will get you to this amazing affluent place. It tends to be that if you save and invest, you will stay ahead of inflation. You will get slightly ahead. You will get comfortable. But in order to get ahead, you've got to commit to being of excellent service to others at scale.
Should you leave money to your kids?
Depends on the kids. So let's say you have a kid who's disabled. Of course, that's going to change their life. They don't have an ability to do that. Maybe you have a kid who's massively community minded but not entrepreneurially minded, and they're doing great work. And it's like, you know what? It just so happened to be that I was entrepreneurial and that was my thing. And if I can support this other work, then that's a good reason. If you have a child who dedicates themselves to being part of the business, so here's like, this is why it's not such a simple question. Let's say, for example, my daughter decides that by the time she's in her 20s, she recognizes that we have an amazing family business and that it would be the best opportunity to work together on building that. Let's say she dedicates 10, 20, 30 years of her life into building out the family business. It's only right that she becomes a major partner in the business and an equity partner and all of that. Should you just throw money at a spoilt brat who wants to live large without any exchange? Probably not. But yeah, it depends on the kid.
Favorite book?
I believe that the book that changes your life the most is the one that you write, not one you read. So I'm a really big believer of getting people to write a book. And I'm like make an effort to write a book.
But what's your favorite book?
The books I've written.
Yeah, you just came out with a book, right? Or you're coming out with
What's your favorite book that you haven't written?
Well, stick with the point. The point is that reading is consumption, and that's great. It's great to consume. Writing is creation. We make money from creation, not consumption. So if you can create a book, you're going to learn so much and earn so much more than any book you could possibly read. So I can give you a list of great books, but I want to challenge people to be less on the consumption side and more on the creation side. Like I want to say that technology has democratized the ability to have a book out. You used to have a publisher, you used to have a distribution channel, you used to have all of these things that were very hard to get. Now all of those things are easy. So for the first time in human history, technology can help you to write and publish and distribute that book. So why not make it a short-term goal in the next year or two to write, publish, and distribute a book and have a book and have that intellectual property asset that's working for you, have an intellectual property asset that is positioning you as an authority at something, and push yourself through the challenge of writing something rather than just being the same person who just reads stuff. Like reading stuff is not hard. Writing stuff is hard. Do the hard thing.
What's a daily habit you swear by?
Being sales focused. Business is demand and supply, and no one's going to come and do the demand side. It's very easy to get people to come and do the supply side. It's very hard to generate demand. Being involved in marketing, sales campaigns, selling, pitching. I believe entrepreneurship is the journey of 1,000 pitches. That one way or another, if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you're going to have to pitch that thing 1,000 times. 1,000 average pitches gets you nothing, and 1,000 great pitches gets you $10 to $100 million. So 1,000 great pitches. So a daily habit is like, I need to pitch my business every single day to somebody new, right? Or re-enroll someone. It's a new employee, it's a new customer, it's a new investor, it's a new supplier, it's a new partner. But pitching. Entrepreneurship is the journey of 1,000 pitches.
Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the show.
appreciate
We
this.
really appreciate it. It was a fun episode. It was a lot of fun researching you. I feel like I've learned a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you to all
Yeah.
of the viewers out there.
Yeah, if you haven't already subscribed, by the way, and you've made it to the very end, it's totally free. Here's my sales pitch to you. It's free. It takes you a split second just to click one button. You're going to be seeing episodes just like this. We post every single Sunday with bonus episodes thrown in. And if you want to see this episode as well, without any cuts, completely uncensored, those few little swear words, without any sponsors, nothing, we do have a membership you can join as well. Anything you would like to say?
It's been absolutely awesome. I love the show. I've been a fan of the show for years. Many of your episodes, Amosi and Cody Sanchez, and some of those great ones. So it's a real honor to be on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for
we've
coming on.
really enjoyed this, and like I said, that debate on Diary of a CEO
That was awesome. You guys
was
should check
so
that out.
entertaining. I think I listened to it like twice because I listened to it once when it came out. I was like, this is crazy, and then I listened to it again for this.
If you guys want to see Gary's economics coming on the show, we would
Yeah,
love to have
I
him
would-
on. Daniel's going to try to
Super
put us
open.
in touch with him. So
Yeah,
Thank
and we'll
you.
link to all of your info down below
Yes.
in the description as well
Amazing.
for anyone who wants to follow along. Thank you so much.
thank you
Until
guys
next time.
so much for watching.